Chapter 1410. Nothing. Seeing the Black Dragon King's confused face, Wuji smiled. You want to leave right after the city war ended? It won't be that easy, right? As long as everyone understands, I don't need to fake the word count. As a writer with a conscience, I won't use such low-end fake word count methods. Kiki. The Black Dragon King laughed coldly, not showing any weakness. This is between the Black Dragon Guild and Blood Alliance. Xuanjin has already benefited from it, and you're still not satisfied? Your appetite is really good. If it wasn't for Blood Alliance, with just your team alone, humph. The Black Dragon King wasn't someone who would take a loss. His words were obviously warning Wuji that no matter how strong Xuanjin was, they were just a team and they had taken enough advantage of him. This time, because Blood Alliance took the blame, Xuanjin was able to benefit from it. It was good enough that they didn't take care of him. So, why did they want to take advantage of him? Oh, Wuji said calmly. Don't you know that Saga City is Yu Huiqing's subsidiary city? Subsidiary city? The Black Dragon King was shocked. You are Yu Huiqing's city lord? As the true ruler of Yingzhou's 3 islands and 6 cities, there was no way the Black Dragon King didn't know what subsidiary city meant. Blood Alliance and Xuanjin were Yu Huiqing's people. This was something the Black Dragon King knew too. It was obvious that the Black Dragon King found it unbelievable that Xuanjin could suppress Blood Alliance and become Yu Huiqing's city lord. No, the Grandmaster of Combat that killed you is, Wuji said. That Grandmaster of Combat. Thinking about Wang Yu, the Black Dragon King, and the others felt a chill down their backs. Wang Yu's terrifying figure appeared in their minds. Damn, this was a ruthless person. Looking at the way he snatched the seal, it definitely wasn't his first time doing it. He might really be Yu Huiqing's city lord. Moreover, the current situation was disadvantageous to the Black Dragon King and the others. Wuji also brought out Wang Yu. Even if the Black Dragon King had 100 doubts, he had to force himself to believe Wuji's words. Then what do you want? The Black Dragon King asked after weighing the pros. Wuji waved his hand. No rush. Wait for someone first. With that, Wuji slowly descended from the sky, following which Wuji waved his hand. The guards outside the resurrection point raised their spears and blocked the resurrection point, completely cutting off the Black Dragon King's thoughts of escaping. A few minutes later, the blood-red war flag and the blood-red Azura appeared at the Yamatai City's teleportation array. They then hurriedly ran to the Black Dragon King's resurrection point. Bosses. After seeing the people from Xuanjin sect, the blood-red war flag quickened its pace and rushed forward. It shook the hands of the people from Xuanjin sect one by one, so excited that it could not speak. It could be seen that blood-red war flag's gratitude towards Xuanjin and the others came from the bottom of their hearts. After all, without Xuanjin's help, Blood Alliance would really be finished. Not only would they lose Saga City, but if the war compensation wasn't in place, Blood Alliance would probably be killed by Black Dragon Guild. This was uprooting them. Blood-red war flag relied on the guild to survive. If Black Dragon Guild schemed against them, they would probably never be able to make a comeback. Xuanjin had pulled Blood Alliance back from the brink of death. How could Blood-red war flag not be grateful? Where's Oxgod? After shaking hands, Blood-red war flag looked around excitedly. This was the person Blood-red war flag should be most grateful to. On the roof, Wuji pointed at the roof. As expected, Wang Yu was sitting on the roof, looking into the distance with empty eyes. He seemed to have no interest in what Wuji was going to do next. Perhaps this was the legendary loneliness of an expert. Hey, Nyogo! Blood-red war flag shouted and waved at Wang Yu. Wang Yu looked at Blood-red war flag and nodded slightly as a greeting. Blood-red war flag also knew Wang Yu's temper. Although he didn't seem to be close to people, he was very loyal. Therefore, Blood-red war flag didn't feel that Wang Yu was neglecting them. Instead, they turned and asked Wuji, Boss Wuji, why did you call me here? Hee. Wuji laughed. The war is over. Isn't it time to talk about compensation? Our people can't die for nothing, right? After saying that, before Blood-red war flag could speak, Wuji turned and said to Black Dragon King, This is Blood Alliance's boss, Blood-red war flag. This should be the first time you guys have met. Black Dragon King looked at Blood Red War Flag. Although he didn't say anything, he couldn't hide the disdain in his eyes. Although Black Dragon Society had lost this time, Black Dragon King didn't think that he had lost to Blood Alliance. Towards people like Blood Red War Flag, who relied on luck, Black Dragon King looked down on them. Blood Red War Flag was good at reading people's expressions. Seeing Black Dragon King's gaze, he was annoyed. He scolded, "Who the F***CK is this? He's so arrogant." Wuji introduced. "He is the boss of the Black Dragon Triad. Hey, what's your name?" Wuji raised his chin at Black Dragon King. Black Dragon King was furious. He had been tricked so badly. He thought that the other party had researched him thoroughly. He didn't expect that the other party didn't even know his name. Black Dragon King. Black Dragon King said unhappily, "F***CK. So it's you, bastard." When Blood Red War Flag heard that the person in front of him was Black Dragon Society's boss, he immediately flew into a rage. He took out his spear from his pocket and was about to stab Black Dragon King. Seeing this, Wuji hurriedly walked between the two of them to stop Blood Red War Flag. Then he said, "It's over. There's no point in you two fighting. Now that everyone is here, why don't we talk about compensation? Let's turn hatred into money." Hearing Wuji's words, Blood Red War Flag and Black Dragon King were speechless. Turning hatred into money? It was a waste of talent for such a person to play games. Indeed, in the eyes of Wuji and Xuanjin, there was nothing in the game that money couldn't solve. If there was, then they would add more money. Not to mention, wasn't Wang Yu awesome? In the past, there were times when a hero was stumped by a penny. Why did others pretend to be virtuous? Blood Red War Flag was the party who took the money, so naturally, they would not object to Wuji's proposal. Black Dragon King was a businessman, and he also knew the principle of being willing to lose a bet. His grandfather once said that if you fell behind, you would be beaten. If you couldn't beat them, you would have to cede territory and sign unequal treaties. This was something that had happened since ancient times. It was reasonable for Wuji to propose using money to resolve the problem. Black Dragon King, as the defeated party, would certainly not object. After all, he was the boss of a large guild with hundreds of thousands of subordinates. Black Dragon King was still very bold. As soon as Wuji finished speaking, Black Dragon King said boldly, "Tell me, how do you want to compensate?" Wuji did not speak. Instead, he turned his face to look at Blood Red War Flag. Chapter 14:11. Did I say so? Blood Red War Flag was flattered that Wuji had given them the right to ask for compensation. After all, Wuji had been present in the past, and it was usually Wuji who asked for compensation. Oh, speaking of which, the main reason was that Blood Alliance was used to being the one to compensate. Speaking of which, Blood Red War Flag was quite upset. However, Blood Red War Flag was still the leader of a guild. They had been the leader for a long time, so they were quite familiar with asking for compensation. Blood Red War Flag calculated for a while, and then said to Wuji, "This time, our Blood Alliance suffered a lot of casualties, and we even committed suicide, including the consumption of supplies. It should be a number. 1 million gold?" Wuji heard this and was in disbelief. Meow. Blood Red War Flag was really useless. They were attacked for no reason at all, and they almost died. Just 1 million gold coins? Mental damage compensation was more than that, all right. Of course, Blood Red War Flag couldn't be blamed for asking for so little. After all, they were a proper guild, and they had professional calculations for compensation. They weren't like the shameless Chuanjin sect, who liked to ask for exorbitant sums. Even a toad would have to crawl out of the ground to get its money. There were 30,000 players defending the city. After a battle, the casualties and consumables would at most cost a few 100,000 gold. Asking for 1 million was already a 50-50 profit. After the gold exchange rate fell to 110, the market gradually became saturated and the exchange rate stabilized. 1 million gold was 10 million renminbi. Fighting a city battle in the game would cost 10 million renminbi. Was that considered little? Seeing Wuji's expression, Blood Red War Flag thought that their asking price was too high and scared Wuji. They quickly said, "If it's too much, I can give you a discount. No need. Wuji waved his hand and then said to Bao San, old rules. Okay. Bao San nodded and translated for the Black Dragon King. Blood Alliance has 30,000 players, 100 gold per player. After saying this, Bao San stared at the Black Dragon King, observing his expression. He didn't expect the Black Dragon King to be so rich. After hearing Bao San's conditions, the Black Dragon King calmly said, 100 gold per person, that's 3 million gold. Very reasonable. As he spoke, the Black Dragon King took out 3 money bags and handed them to Bao San. Seeing the Black Dragon King taking out the money so readily, even Wuji, who had a calm and collected personality, could not help but raise his eyebrows. That was 3 million gold coins. Even Xuanjin would find it difficult to take out such a sum in one go. But the Black Dragon King carried it with him everywhere he went, and looking at the calm expression on this old thing's face, it was clear that 3 million gold coins was not a big sum to him. However, when he thought about it, it made sense. The 6 main cities under the Black Dragon Guild had at least a few 100,000 players. It was only 3 million, and it was not even worth 10 gold coins per person. This did not include the main city taxes and the value of resources. Obviously, for a merchant like the Black Dragon King to struggle in the game, the value contained in it could be said to be limitless. This was the Japanese version of evildoers run wild. Thinking of this, the people of Xuanjin sighed regretfully in the guild channel. Damn, so he's still a rich person. It seems that this is too little, we're going to lose money. Did you see that? This was the Xuanjin style of shamelessness. If you don't pick up money when you go out, you'll lose money. No wonder people say that people should not be too serious. After receiving the Black Dragon King's money bags, Bao San handed 2 of them to Wuji and then handed the other one to Blood Red War Flag. Seeing this, Blood Red War Flag and the Black Dragon King revealed a puzzled look. Wuji and Bao San said in unison to the 2 of them in 2 languages, labor fee. As they said this, the 2 of them also pointed to Wang Yu, who was sitting on the roof. The Black Dragon King and Blood Red War Flag looked up at Wang Yu and immediately felt relieved, showing an understanding expression. There was no problem with such a super expert personally coming to watch the scene and asking for a labor fee. No one would question it, nor would they dare to question it. After receiving the compensation, Blood Red War Flag's face was full of joy. The unhappiness in their hearts caused by the city battle was swept away. Today was really a good day. Not only did they get a city for nothing, but they also received a large amount of compensation. Money was really a good thing. Wuji was right. Turning hatred into money was such a beautiful thing. Then can we leave now? Asked the Black Dragon King. The money was paid, and the people involved were satisfied. The Black Dragon King did not want to stay in this sad place for a moment longer. Just as Bao San was about to let the Black Dragon King leave, Wuji rushed to say, "Don't rush." That was the compensation. We still have to talk about the toll. Toll? Hearing Wuji's words, the Black Dragon King was immediately stunned. What toll? Don't play dumb. Wuji pointed to the surrounding buildings and said, "See that? Since ancient times, Yamatai and Saga Harbor have been an inseparable part of Yuhuicheng. It's unreasonable for you foreigners to come and go as you please. In reality, if it's a small case, it's smuggling. If it's a big case, it's an invasion. You'll have to go to military court." You. The Black Dragon King held back a mouthful of blood and said angrily, "What do you want?" The Black Dragon King now understood that he had met a tough opponent. It would not be easy for him to leave this place. How many Black Dragon Guild players are on the island now? Wuji asked. 150,000. The Black Dragon King said angrily. In the game, players could be resurrected after they died, and there was no such thing as death and attrition. Originally, there were 120,000 to 30,000 Black Dragon Triad players in Yamatai and Saga City. Including the reinforcements that came later, there were 150,000. 150,000! Wuji pretended to be angry and said, "We only have a few tens of thousands of people. Your Black Dragon Guild actually has 150,000 people. Isn't that an invasion?" If you say so. The Black Dragon King did not want to argue with Wuji. Humph. Wuji snorted coldly. I hate invaders the most in my life. Old rules, 150,000 people, 100 gold toll each. 15 million? Hearing this number, no matter how rich the Black Dragon King was, he could not sit still and said angrily, "Why don't you go rob?" What a joke. Wuji said disdainfully. How can robbing be faster than this? I'm not you guys. What if I say no? The Black Dragon King said with a black face. It's fine if you don't give it. Wuji pointed in the direction of the gate of Yamatai City and said, You know, this Yamatai and Saga City are subsidiary cities of Yuhuicheng. As long as we close the gate, close the port, order the guards to seal the city, and turn back to Yuhuicheng, your people will not be able to leave the city, and those who want to enter the city will not be able to enter. Chapter 14:12. Hearing Wuji's words, the Black Dragon King's face darkened. In the game, sealing off a city was definitely on the same level as stealing an account. Once the main city was sealed off like what Wuji said, the entire city would be prohibited from entering and exiting. The main city was the safest harbor and the largest supply station for players. Without potions and other supplies in the main city, the efficiency of players outside the city would be greatly reduced. That was not all. Equipment had a durability setting. Once the equipment was damaged, there was no place outside the city to repair it. They could only watch as the equipment was destroyed. What did it mean to survive in the dangerous wilderness without equipment and potions? This meant that players could only fight small monsters that gave little experience. They definitely did not dare to fight high-level monsters, let alone bosses. Otherwise, it would be tragic if they died accidentally. It was fine to resurrect in the wilderness. At most, they would lose some experience. Killing small monsters would take them a decade and a half. If it was closer to the main city and resurrected in the city, they would not be able to leave. In the game, the most common way for players to play was to kill monsters to level up and obtain equipment. If they were trapped in a city and could not even see monsters, what was the point of playing? By then, this island would be a big prison, and half of the Black Dragon Guild's players would be exiled to this island by Wuji. Looking at Wuji and Blood Red Warflag's stance, it was not that they could not do such a thing. After all, compared to the vast heroes' continent, this small island was not worth mentioning. As for the more serious consequences, the Black Dragon King did not even dare to think about it. He was already drenched in cold sweat. Meow, this harmless-looking young man in front of me has his hands all over my waist. This is too much, isn't it? Seeing the fear on the Black Dragon King's face, Wuji smiled and said, You're afraid now? I was planning to lock you guys up for 3 to 5 months. When our local players are a level higher than yours, we'll organize a pirate extermination event every year. There are hundreds of millions of players in the Heroes continent, and it costs 1 gold coin per person to participate. We'll earn back the 15 million in a day. Even a roll of toilet paper and a pair of underwear have their uses. Don't think that I can't make use of trash like you. Yo, that's a good suggestion. Hearing Wuji's words, Blood Red Warflag said excitedly, I'll reserve tens of thousands of slots in advance. No problem. Wuji nodded at Blood Red Warflag in satisfaction. He seemed to be very satisfied with Blood Red Warflag's supporting character. Bao-san chuckled as he translated their conversation to the Black Dragon King. The Black Dragon King was completely intimidated by the few of them. He pointed at Wuji with a trembling finger and said, You're ruthless. Wuji smiled and said, You flatter me, you flatter me. Confucius once said, When a friend comes from afar, even if he is far away, he must kill him. I'm just following the teachings of my predecessors. What do you think? Are you going to hand over the money obediently, or wait for me to round you up and slaughter you like pigs? To pay and leave, or to be exiled forever. This was a choice that people like the Black Dragon King didn't even need to consider. Humph! This time we the Black Dragon Gang admit defeat. The Black Dragon King snorted coldly. He took out a contract angrily and signed it before handing it to Wuji. Wuji looked at the contract and nodded in satisfaction. You really paid 15 million? Blood Red Warflag came over and asked excitedly. See for yourself. Wuji waved the contract in front of Blood Red War Flag. This Blood Red War Flag saw a bunch of zeros behind the compensation figure on the contract and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. They admired Wuji from the bottom of their hearts. Blood Red War Flag was the leader of a guild of 10,000 people, but it was the first time they had seen such a large amount of money after playing the game for so long. There were only a dozen people in Xuanzhen, but they had done something that Blood Red War Flag, a guild leader of 10,000 people, didn't dare to do. This showed how great the art of extortion was. How could Blood Red War Flag not admire Wuji, who was a master of extortion? Blood Red Azura cried out. Oh my God, I've only seen such a large amount of money when I visit tombs during the Qingming festival. Haha. After extorting so much money from the Black Dragon King, Wuji was in a good mood. He wrote a 5 million contract and gave it to Blood Red War Flag. Give this to the brothers to drink. Wuji had always been clear when doing things. If it weren't for Blood Alliance, he wouldn't have been able to get this 15 million. As the saying went, those who saw it had a share. Xuanzhen had already taken the majority, so he couldn't let Blood Alliance get nothing. How can I accept this? Blood Red War Flag was also an honest person. Seeing that Wuji gave them so much money, they were at a loss for words. At this time, Wang Yu, who was on the roof, said, "Take it. There will be many times when we need you in the future. If you don't take it, how are you going to ask for it in the future?" That's right. Wuji snapped his fingers and smiled. Old Cow knows me the best. Okay then. Blood Red War Flag heard this and happily put the contract away. If there's something like this in the future, come find us. It seemed like Blood Red War Flag had tasted the sweetness. Thinking about it, it made sense. In this city war, the Quanjin sect had paid a city lord seal of Swiss City in exchange for a Yama City and 12 million gold as compensation. Blood Alliance players died once or twice on average, but in exchange, they got a main city and 6 million gold as compensation. Compared to the gains, the losses of both sides were negligible. What did it mean to throw a brick to attract jade? This was it. If there was money, everyone would earn it. It was a win-win situation, and everyone was happy. After receiving the money, Wuji casually removed the ban on the revival point. The guards stood on both sides and opened up a path for the Black Dragon King and the others. The Blood Red War Flag followed suit and lifted the seal on the port of Saga City. Sigh. The Black Dragon King sighed. He looked at the Yamatai city that once belonged to him with a complicated gaze. He then gave the order to retreat in the guild channel. The Black Dragon Guild players received the order. Although they were extremely unwilling, they had no choice but to leave the island. Seeing that the Black Dragon King had left, Blood Red War Flag touched his chin and said, "Boss Wuji, actually your pig farming plan was quite good." Chapter 14:13. The game company did not make games just for one person, but for all the online gamers in the world. After all, the game company earned money from the public, and it was impossible to harm the interests of the majority for one person. The Black Dragon Guild had 150,000 people. If Wuji really locked up all the Black Dragon Guild members on the island, even if Wuji's actions were within the rules, the game company would forcefully change the rules. The final interpretation was in the hands of the game company, and the players' objections would be ineffective. Moreover, the players only saw benefits in the game. The Japanese people were not bosses, and there was no practical meaning in killing them. Everyone might find it interesting at first, but it would be boring after one time. Moreover, not everyone liked to bully noobs. Therefore, this pig farming plan was basically a one-off deal. Yamatai City had the largest mining area in the entire Ingzhou Island. This was the true, inexhaustible source of gold and silver. It was more stable to find people to mine for money than to raise pigs for a few months. Compared to the pig farming plan, this was a legitimate deal that benefited the public and the people. The players and the game company would both win, and they could also increase GDP and generate tax revenue for the country. Wasn't that great? Of course, Blood Red War Flag would never understand Wuji's thinking in this lifetime. Wuji was too lazy to explain anything to him, as long as he knew that the pig farming plan was not feasible. Otherwise, this short-sighted guy might do something. Under Wuji's pressure, the Black Dragon King moved all the Black Dragon Guild players away from the island. After Blood Red War Flag received the compensation, they chatted with Wang Yu, Wuji, and the others for a while before leaving happily. After the city war, Saga City was now full of scars. Blood Red War Flag also had to quickly start the work of managing the main city. Recuperating was the most important thing. Seeing Blood Red War Flag leave, the Chuanjin people surrounded Wuji excitedly and shouted, "Split the money! Split the money!" This was 12 million gold, and Chuanjin had only seen a larger amount than this when he got the cloak fragments. Split the money? Wuji pretended to be dumb. Is there such a thing in the world? Damn! Everyone was furious. You trash. Don't tell me you want to take it all for yourself. Of course not. Wuji laughed. That's more like it. Everyone was relieved. Then, Wuji touched his chin and said, I came up with the idea, and the person was killed by Old Cow. We should split the 12 million equally. Wuji is right. Wang Yu gave Wuji a thumbs up. Bullshit, Mingdu shouted. I just killed someone outside. All right, I'll give you 1 million. Wuji smiled and threw a contract to Mingdu. The contract in the game was equivalent to a check. After the player received it, they could go to the system bank and exchange it for gold coins of the same amount. The one who paid the money was naturally the one who signed the contract. F***CK. I was the one who gave you the seal. Seeing that Mingdu dared to take credit for casting a spell, Bai Mingyu said, unwilling to be outdone. You have a share too. Wuji threw out another contract. I'm releasing the barrier. We're shooting arrows. Chun Xiang, Yang Na, and Linglong Dream each received 1 million. In the end, only Bao San, Yin Lao Air, to place one's pride, and Ming Jian Daoxue were left with a dumbfounded expression. Although these unlucky fellows had tagged along, they hadn't been able to get involved in any of the fights. Seeing that everyone else was getting paid, the few of them grew anxious. If they had known this would happen, they wouldn't have chosen melee classes. How easy would it be to just hide in the shadows and cause trouble for others? We're cheering for you guys. In the end, to place one's pride was the more shameless one, throwing out the most shameless reason. Wuji gave him a sidelong glance. Does this count? What do you think? Bao San and Ming Jian Daoxue both took out their weapons. Yin Lao Air also looked like he wanted to devour someone. Air. Wuji turned to look at the others. However, the others had already received the money. Who cared about Wuji's life or death? They all pretended not to see it. Wuji turned his gaze towards Wang Yu. Wang Yu said indifferently, as long as I have a share, it's fine. Whether it's counted or not is none of my business. F***CK. Wuji had no choice but to throw 4 contracts to Bao, San, and the others. At this time, Wuji only had 3 million left. After hesitating for a moment, Wuji did not dare to offend Wang Yu. He kept 1 million for himself and signed a remaining 2 million for Wang Yu. Wang Yu did not even look at it before putting it into his bag. After splitting the loot, everyone dispersed to adapt to their new territory. Wang Yu was also planning to find a quest to do when he suddenly received a phone notification. There are so many phone calls today. Wang Yu shook his head helplessly and logged out of the game. He picked up his phone and saw that it was Evildoers Run Wild calling. What's wrong? What's the matter? After picking up the phone, Wang Yu was puzzled and asked. Evildoers Run Wild was a big shot in Rebirth. He was very busy and rarely took the initiative to contact Wang Yu. On the other side of the phone, Evildoers Run Wild shouted, I'm in Yuhuicheng. Give me the authority. I want to go to Yamatai City. What are you looking at? Wang Yu curled his lips and said, There's no one here. What's there to look at? The Black Dragon Triad was the main population on this island. When the Black Dragon Triad left, not only did they take away all the Black Dragon Triad players, but the other natives of Neon also left. Now the island was filled with local players. The huge Yamatai City was only left with Chuanjin's group. What's there to look at? It's not like I don't know them. I'm not looking at people. Evildoers Run Wild said, I'm just inspecting the mining area. Evildoers Run Wild was the biggest or merchant in the local server. All the mining areas in the main cities of the local server were controlled by Evildoers Run Wild. Now that there was a new main city, Evildoers Run Wild naturally had to be the first to get involved. It seemed that Evildoers Run Wild was a competent shopkeeper. Wang Yu was speechless. You really think of yourself as a businessman. Muttering, Wang Yu hung up the phone and went online. After going online, Wang Yu found that Wu Ji did not leave. Instead, he looked at him with a smile and asked, "You went to answer the phone?" "Yes, old Yao called." "How did you know?" Wang Yu was stunned. He came to the mining area to take a look. Wu Ji laughed again. "Is he your brother or my brother?" Wang Yu was a little surprised to find that he did not know his brother as well as Wu Ji. Wu Ji laughed and said, "When we came to Saga City to help, I sent him a message." Wang Yu was speechless. "You're scheming against him." "What are you talking about?" Wu Ji waved his hand and said, "This is called cooperation, understand? Don't use your dirty thoughts to doubt my pure character." "Pure? Bah." Wang Yu gave Wu Ji the middle finger. Chapter 14:14. Wang Yu and Wu Ji had played together for so long, but he still didn't understand Wu Ji's thoughts. If Wu Ji stuck out his butt, Wang Yu could guess what he was going to do. As mentioned before, Chuanjin wasn't a mainstream guild. They walked the path of elites. There were only a few seedlings in the entire guild, and they were fundamentally different from a big guild like Blood Alliance. Just Huicheng was a main city, and Chuanjin needed to distribute the administrative power of the major cities to other guilds. Now that Chuanjin didn't have affiliated main cities, there were 3 cities under Chuanjin. Huicheng and Port City had a foundation of local players, and they could use the players of other guilds to develop. Now that Black Dragon Society left, Yamatai City was left with Chuanjin's group of lone commanders. Without people, could it still be called a main city? It was called a dead city. Not only did the main city need maintenance fees, but they also needed to accept quests to earn main city contribution points. These things that accumulated couldn't be done by just one person. No matter how strong Chuanjin's people were, they couldn't replace tens of thousands of players. The reason why Wu Ji sent a message to Evildoers Run Wild was to let Evildoers Run Wild bring players to Yamatai City to be free citizens of Chuanjin. Unhindered had the advantage in numbers. With Unhindered's men stationed at Yama Platform, Black Dragon Guild would not be able to attack Saga City like they did today. It would not be as simple as collecting tolls. Of course, Wu Ji wasn't just spouting nonsense when he said that the goodies should be kept within the family. Although Wu Ji made the members of Unhindered the World work for free, the city's resources still belonged to Unhindered the World and the Quanjin sect. A guild enjoying a city's resources alone was a VIP treatment that only big guilds in the main city had. Who knew how many guilds were fighting for this opportunity? Wu Ji wasn't willing to give it to others. At least Evildoers Run Wild was an outsider. Moreover, Yamatai City had such rich mineral resources, which was something that Wang Yu and Wu Ji didn't expect. After Evildoers Run Wild brought people over, Chuanjin collected rent. To move Unhindered to mine, it was another sharing of resources. As they spoke, Wang Yu opened his friend's list and found Evildoers Run Wild's name. Soon, Evildoers Run Wild hurried to Yamatai City. "Hey, boss Wu Ji." Seeing Wang Yu and Wang Yu, Evildoers Run Wild greeted from afar. "Yeah." Wang Yu faintly nodded his head as a response, looking like a strict elder brother. Wu Ji, on the other hand, smiled and greeted, "Yao, how have you been recently?" "I'm fine." Evildoers Run Wild was still swift and decisive. He responded casually and went straight to the point. Let's go. Let's go take a look at the mining area." "Why the rush? Don't want a drink or two?" Wu Ji asked politely. "I don't have time." Evildoers Run Wild waved his hand and said, "Recently, the accounts of a few main cities don't match. I still have to go take a look later." To move Unhindered business across 300 main cities in 2 factions, it wasn't surprising that the accounts couldn't match. To move Unhindered business, as the boss of Evildoers Run Wild, his main job was to deal with this kind of mess. In that case, let's go directly to the mining area. Knowing that evildoers run wild still had business to attend to, Wuji didn't waste any time. He agreed and walked to the mining area outside the city with evildoers run wild and Wang Yu. The mining area of Yamatai City was at the edge of Yamatai City. Leaving Yamatai City required a lot of detours. Fortunately, the three of them were cloaked players, so they flew in a straight line. 10 minutes later, the three of them flew to the mining area of Yamatai City. The three of them looked down from above. The entire mountain range was glowing with ore. How is it? Wuji asked. Evildoers run wild proudly. The ore here is good, right? Unexpectedly, evildoers run wild frowned and said, the ore is good, but it's a little strange. Strange? Wang Yu and Wuji weren't ore merchants, so they weren't as professional as evildoers run wild. Hearing evildoers run wild's words, they were confused. Yup, evildoers run wild pointed at the mining area below. The ore here is obviously much more than the other main cities. Isn't that great? Wuji was confused. Or was it consumable? Who would complain about having too much of it? No, evildoers run wild shook his head. There's definitely something wrong with this kind of ore. The game world was all about balance. Therefore, the mining area was the same as the Wizard Academy or the church. It was the standard configuration of every main city. Most of the time, it was a mine filled with zombies. Even if there were some differences, the difference wouldn't be too big. In the words of the game designers, ore was one of the main resources in this world. Therefore, every main city would be built near a mine. However, the mining area of Yamatai City was different. The mining area here was obviously much bigger than other mining areas. Moreover, it was obvious that the ore was very rich. What was even more ridiculous was that there was no mine cave in such a large mine. The mine cave was generated by the system. The absence of a mine cave meant that the mine was well preserved and had not been mined. As for why it was not mined, there were only two reasons. First, in the background story, the ore in this area were all low-level copper ores. There was no value in mining. Second, in the background story, this mining area was a dangerous area. Normal people wouldn't have the ability to mine here. Either of the two reasons would affect the income of the mine. Seeing that Wang Yu and Wuji were confused, evildoers run wild briefly explained to them. No wonder. Wang Yu and Wuji rubbed their chins thoughtfully. Evildoers run wild was a businessman. The players under him mainly mined for money and had no interest in other things. As long as there were factors that would affect the mine, it would not be an ideal environment for them. They could not possibly work hard to lose money because of favors. However, evildoers run wild did not directly say that this place was not suitable. Instead, he looked around and said, "Let's go down and take a look." Saying so, evildoers run wild folded its wings and landed steadily on the ground. Wang Yu and Wuji also landed slowly. At this time, evildoers run wild took out an exquisite mining hoe from his pocket and casually dug at the mountain wall. Wang Yu and Wuji were stunned. As expected of a mining tycoon, carrying a mining hoe with him was indeed a professional. Clang! A soft sound interrupted Wang Yu and Wuji's thoughts. A golden ore rolled on the ground. Soft gold or evildoers run wild saw the ore on the ground and frowned slightly. He casually picked up the ore. After seeing the ore's attributes, his expression became very complicated. Evildoers run wild was right. This yellow ore was indeed soft gold. Oregon soft gold was a rare or on the same level as mithril. Although the mining hoe in evildoers run wild's hands had a higher chance of producing exquisite gold or a piece of soft gold, or was obviously not a problem with the hoe. It seemed that this mining area was definitely an exquisite mining area. P.S. Follow the official WeChat account, Limiox's 666. Chapter 14:15. Since it was an exquisite mining area, it was obvious that the reason why there were no tunnels in this area, and it seemed like the Black Dragon Guild had not mined it before, was because this area was dangerous. Just as evildoers run wild was holding the ore in a daze, Wang Yu took 2 steps closer to Wuji and evildoers run wild. "What's wrong?" Seeing the or in evildoers run wild's hand and Wang Yu's expression, Wuji's heart tightened. Wang Yu pointed to the front and said, "There's a murderous aura over there. Everyone, get out of here." Rumble. Before Wang Yu could finish his sentence, the ground suddenly shook violently, and the entire mining area began to shake. Immediately after, the ground in the direction Wang Yu pointed to opened up a large hole. The shape of the Yamatai mining area was like a funnel, and Wang Yu and the other two were standing in the funnel. As the mountain continued to shake violently, the ore in all directions rolled into the hole. Wang Yu and evildoers run wild had a foundation in martial arts, so they barely managed to stabilize themselves. Wuji accidentally lost his balance and squatted on the ground, then involuntarily rolled into the hole. F***CK. Although Wuji's body was not under his control, he was still very conscious. As he rolled, he shouted, "Quick, help me!" Seeing that Wuji was about to be swallowed by the hole, Wang Yu rushed forward and reached out to grab Wuji's collar. Just as the two were about to turn around, they felt a wave of heat hit them. Boom! A pillar of fire shot up from the hole, and at the same time, a fiery red figure jumped out of the flames in front of Wang Yu. The fiery red figure was about the same height as Wang Yu, and its entire body was covered in crimson flames. It was holding a ball of fire in its hand, and it looked very unique. Inferno Monarch Clone, Level 80, Dark Gold Boss, Elite, HP, 5000000 MP, 5000000 Skill, Transmogrification Talent, Flame Manipulation. Background Introduction. One of the avatars of the Flame Monarch, the guardian of the Divine Flame mining area. Wang Yu casually sent the information she had obtained to the team channel. Evildoers Run Wild came to a sudden realization when he saw the attributes of the Inferno Monarch's clone. It was a level 80 Dark Gold Elite boss, and a mage boss at that. No wonder no one was mining this mine. As the saying goes, every generation has a god, and every generation has a god. If assassins were the kings in the early stages of the game, then mages would be the kings in the late stages of the game. This was also the case for mages' bosses. This was especially true for high-level bosses in the later stages of the game. Their AoE magic damage was astonishing. With a wave of their hands, they could turn corpses into piles of bones. In an era where most players were level 50, it would be fine if it was a boss of this level for other professions. They would eventually be able to take it down with their numbers. However, against a boss of the mage class, it was equivalent to using a human's life against a nuclear weapon. Inferno Monarch's eyes flashed with flames. He looked at the three people in front of him and roared, "This is Inferno Monarch's territory. You despicable thieves, put down what doesn't belong to you." As he spoke, Inferno Monarch raised his hand, and the flames in his hand turned into a fire snake that rushed toward Wuji. As expected of an elite boss that had the intelligence to choose, he chose the weakest one. Among the three people present, Wuji was the only support class. Who else could he not attack? F***CK. Wuji felt wronged. The one mining was Evildoers Run Wild. Okay, why did he attack him? Although he was depressed, Wuji's hands were not idle. He raised his staff and put a holy light shield on his head. Bang! Once the holy light shield was activated, it had an absolute defense effect. The fire snake hit Wuji's body and dissipated into smoke. However, Wuji was pushed back by the strong impact of the fire snake. He retreated to Evildoers Run Wild side. "You go first." Evildoers Run Wild grabbed Wuji and threw him up. Wuji was thrown 4 to 5 meters high. Wuji spread his wings and tried his best to fly higher into the sky. Inferno Monarch obviously couldn't fly, but he didn't plan on letting Wuji go. Inferno Monarch put his hands together and pulled. A crow covered in flames flew out of his hands and chased after Wuji. Seeing Wuji being chased by the fire crow, Wang Yu and Evildoers Run Wild weren't worried. Wuji was also an expert. It was fine if he couldn't beat a boss, but if he couldn't even beat a random monster summoned by the boss, then he deserved to die. After doing all this, Inferno Monarch waved his hand again. The flames in his hand turned into a long whip and lashed at Wang Yu, who was the closest to him. Although Inferno Monarch was essentially a mage-type boss, his agility wasn't low at all. The long flame whip instantly lashed at Wang Yu's face. Wang Yu tilted his body slightly and dodged the long flame whip. Before Inferno Monarch could retract his weapon, Wang Yu stepped forward and punched him. Bang! With a muffled sound, Wang Yu's fist landed on Inferno Monarch's head. 4211 Inferno Monarch's head shook, and the flames on his head dissipated. A bright red damage number floated up, and the flames on Inferno Monarch's body dimmed. Roar! Inferno Monarch didn't expect the opponent in front of him to be so ferocious and dare to fight him head-on. After a moment of shock, raging flames burst out of his body again. He turned his hands, and the long flame whip in his hand turned into a pair of gauntlets that covered his hands. He punched forward. The reason why mage-type bosses were so strong was that no one could withstand their high magic damage. Even Wang Yu might not be able to. However, this advantage of high damage was not much of a threat to Wang Yu. After all, no matter how high his damage was, it was useless if he couldn't hit anyone. After all, this Inferno Monarch wasn't an epic-tier boss with intelligence. Its intelligence was only slightly higher than those dumb monsters in the system. It was fine if a mage-type boss didn't play to its strengths and avoid its weaknesses, but it was also fighting in melee combat. Wasn't it crazy? Even a level 80 Dark Gold epic boss that specialized in melee combat was suppressed by Wang Yu's skills. A mere amateur elite player was like a chicken in front of Wang Yu. Wang Yu's feet didn't even budge in the face of the Flame Sovereign's angry punch. He lowered his head and punched the rising dragon fist with his right fist, landing heavily on the Flame Sovereign's chin. Inferno Monarch was a high-level boss. Although he had 80% crowd control immunity, he was still hit by Wang Yu's punch and was temporarily stunned. Wang Yu's attacks were always steady, accurate, and ruthless. He remembered the old saying, "The hands are two doors, the feet are one route." After hitting Inferno Monarch, Wang Yu pushed Inferno Monarch's shoulders forward with both hands, pushing Inferno Monarch back. Then, he kicked between Inferno Monarch's legs with Thunderstomp. Well, the feet were one route. You could say that too. Roar! The miserable Inferno Monarch roared and was kicked down the crack by Wang Yu. Chapter 14:16. Whoosh whoosh. After Inferno Monarch fell into the crack, the flames in the crack surged again. Then, Inferno Monarch stepped on the flames and jumped out of the crack. When Inferno Monarch jumped out again, his health bar had already recovered to its original state. Meow, this boss is really shameless. He has a full health resurrection cheat. Is he a scientist too? However, this time, Inferno Monarch had learned his lesson. He knew that Wang Yu was not someone to be trifled with. He clenched his fists, and the flames in his hands transformed into a long sword. It flew over Wang Yu's head and slashed at Evildoers Run Wild, who was behind Wang Yu. Inferno Monarch was unlucky. Wang Yu was not someone to be trifled with, but did that mean that Evildoers Run Wild was someone to be trifled with? Ordinary players might not be able to control monsters with extreme attributes in PvP, but they were still very overpowered in PvE. For example, most major guilds would raise a few mage turrets with full intelligence to act as damage dealers in attack dungeons. Moreover, Evildoers Run Wild was not weak. Other than Wang Yu, the number of players in the game who were better than Evildoers Run Wild could be counted on one hand. Under such circumstances, Evildoers Run Wild seemed to be stronger than Wang Yu. Hung Xing didn't dodge the flaming long blade that was coming at him. Instead, he took a horse stance and lowered his center of gravity. Then, he reached out with his right hand and grabbed the blade of the flaming monarch. Inferno Monarch was an intelligence-type boss. Its strength was not that outstanding. On the other hand, Evildoers Run Wild was a level 58 expert. He had put all his points into strength and a full set of top-tier equipment. His strength was much higher than Inferno Monarch's. After grabbing Inferno Monarch's blade, Evildoers Run Wild swung it down with all his strength. Bang! With a loud noise, Inferno Monarch was smashed into the ground by Evildoers Run Wild. The flames on Inferno Monarch's body scattered, and gravel flew everywhere. -66112, a huge damage number floated above the Inferno Monarch's head. Respawning, without looking at the almanac, was referring to the Inferno Monarch. The Inferno Monarch was a little confused after being treated so roughly by two detestable Grandmasters of Combat. He was even a little unsure who the real boss was. While Flame Monarch was in a daze, Evildoer's Run Wild stepped forward and stepped on Flame Monarch's back. He twisted the blade of the flame long sword in his hand. Flame Monarch unconsciously loosened his grip, and the flame long sword was forcibly snatched away by Evildoer's Run Wild. Then, he slashed at Flame Monarch without any hesitation. The Flame Sovereign was shocked, and he clenched his right fist. Pooh! The long sword in Evildoer's Run Wild's hand turned into sparks and dissipated. At the same time, a long spear appeared in Inferno Monarch's hand, and he stabbed upwards. This was what it meant to be stained by the company one kept. Wang Yu's evil heart was really fast at learning. Evildoer's Run Wild hurriedly took a step back and dodged Flame Monarch's long spear. Then, he kicked Flame Monarch's head. Dong! Flame Monarch was sent flying by the kick. Normal attacks did not have any crowd control effect. Flame Monarch, who was in midair, was about to use Quick Recover to land and gather magic to teach Evildoer's Run Wild a lesson, but he suddenly heard the sound of wind. Yeah! Flame Monarch turned his head back in a panic, only to see Wang Yu flying towards him. His leg was covered in lightning as he kicked Flame Monarch's face. Before the pitiful Flame Monarch could recover from his shock, he was kicked right in front of Rampage. Evildoer's Run Wild chuckled and took 2 steps back. He took out his pickaxe and swung it at Flame Monarch. Flame Monarch once again flew in front of Wang Yu. Wang Yu also changed his weapon into the form of a stick. He hit Flame Monarch and sent him flying towards Evildoer's Run Wild. They were brothers after all. They did not need to communicate at all. They could understand each other's thoughts with just a look and a movement. It was as if they had practiced this many times. Just like that, Flame Monarch became a badminton. He was sent flying around in the sky by Wang Yu and Wang Yu. Even landing on the ground was an extravagant hope. Wang Yu and Wang Yu were having fun, but Flame Monarch was about to cry. Brother, I am a boss after all. Can you give me some face and let me die with dignity? At this time, Wuji, who was in the sky, had also killed Flame Monarch's Fire Raven. However, when he saw the scene below him, his heart collapsed. Even though Wuji knew better than anyone else how overpowered these two were, he had never heard of or even imagined that they could send a level 80 boss flying in the sky. Of course, this was also because the Inferno Monarch was an intelligent boss. Its weight was not its strong point. Moreover, in the background settings of the system, the Inferno Monarch was a fire elemental incarnation. The one that Wang Yu and Wang Yu were bullying was an incarnation, so it was even lighter. Otherwise, this was a level 80 boss. Even if it was an intelligent boss, no matter how overpowered Wang Yu and Wang Yu were, they would not be able to do something like this. Fortunately, intelligent bosses did not have long health bars like other bosses. Under the ravaging of the Wang brothers, the Inferno Monarch's health bar quickly dropped. Very soon, it had dropped to 30%. It's red blood. Seeing the health bar above Flame Monarch's head turn red, everyone was excited. This included Flame Monarch, who had been sent flying in the sky. It was hard to imagine that as a boss, Flame Monarch would actually be excited about his low health bar. Roar! Flame Monarch, who had reached red blood, roared in midair and activated Berserk. Under Berserk, Flame Monarch obtained super armor and was forced to land on the ground. After being trampled on for so long, Flame Monarch's rage had already reached its limit. As soon as he landed, Flame Monarch waved his hands, and 2 balls of black and red flames appeared in his hands. Flame Monarch shouted arrogantly, "Shameless thief, go to hell. Watch me burn." Before Flame Monarch could finish his sentence, there was a flash. Suddenly, Wang Yu appeared in front of Flame Monarch. He raised his hand and grabbed Flame Monarch's neck. Burp! The Flame Monarch's words were stuck in his throat. Strangle was a secondary skill that Wang Yu had created. Although its damage was only at the beginner level, it had the special effect of interrupting spell casting. Flame Monarch, whose neck was being grabbed by Wang Yu, was forcibly interrupted by Wang Yu. The flames in his hands immediately dimmed. "Why are you shouting when we're fighting? You're so annoying." Wang Yu looked at Flame Monarch with disdain and lifted him up. At the same time, evildoers Run Wild had also rushed to Flame Monarch's side. The two of them grabbed Flame Monarch's left and right arms, one on the left and one on the right. Each of them pressed down on half of Flame Monarch's head and smashed him heavily against the mountain wall. Duan. These two bastards' damage was not low. With this smash, Flame Monarch's already low health bar dropped by a third. At the same time, he was stunned. Chapter 14:17. Tisk, tsk, tisk. Seeing the arrogant Inferno Monarch reduced to ashes, Wuji could not help but clench his teeth. F***CK. Rebirth was a holographic simulation. Everyone's combat style was vastly different from a normal keyboard and mouse game. At the current stage of the game, players who could fight monsters 20 levels higher than them were already considered experts. Yet these two had actually pinned a level 80 Dark Gold Elite boss to the ground and pummeled it to death. The boss didn't even have the ability to struggle. F***CK. Who was the real boss here? If he had not known Wang Yu for a long time, Wuji would have suspected that these two were cheating. Wang Yu, on the other hand, clapped his hands and said, "This boss is a little cowardly." Ever since the start of the game, Wang Yu had been focused on killing bosses. The number of bosses that had died by his hands was at least a few dozen, if not a few hundred. The number of bosses that he had fought was innumerable, spanning across all levels of rebirth. From the Dragon God Dales to the Goblin Leader, Wang Yu had fought them all. His understanding of bosses was second to none. Naturally, Wang Yu had defeated a few level 80 Dark Gold bosses. However, there was a 20-level difference in attributes in this game. Even someone as strong as Wang Yu would find it difficult to defeat a level 80 Dark Gold boss. Moreover, this was a magic-type boss. Although he had the help of Sin Rampage this time, the boss's performance did not match his level at all. Ordinary players might not be able to sense this, but for a Grandmaster like Wang Yu, he could sense how much strength his opponent used. Moreover, the Inferno Monarch was so much weaker than other bosses of the same level. With the current strength of the Black Dragon Guild players, the other level 80 magic-type bosses would be nothing. However, with the strength of the Inferno Monarch, the Black Dragon Guild might be able to defeat it. It was a little puzzling that such a boss could still survive until now. Cowardly? A level 80 boss is cowardly? You've become arrogant. Wuji couldn't help but roll his eyes at Wang Yu, expressing his disdain for Wang Yu's arrogant remarks. This was a level 80 boss. Was that really an appropriate word to describe it? However, at this moment, Sin Rampage suddenly pointed at the place where the Inferno Sovereign had disappeared and said, What's this?" Wang Yu and Wuji asked as they looked in the direction that evildoers Run Wild was pointing at. They saw that the Inferno Monarch's crimson fire elemental form had started to gather again, gradually taking on a human form. Holy shit, he's not dead yet. Wuji was shocked to see this, and casually threw a Holy Light technique over. Pooh! The Holy Light technique passed through the fire elemental's body and smashed into the cliff behind it. At the same time, the fire elements condensed into a shadow of the Flame Monarch. It shouted arrogantly, "Humph, despicable thieves! Do you think you can kill me so easily? Too naive." After saying that, the Flame's sovereign shadow floated up with the wind and flew into the crack, swallowed by the flames in the crack. Soon, the Inferno Monarch jumped out again. The HP bar above his head was already full. F***CK. It's a boss that can resurrect. Seeing this, Wuji was slightly stunned. See, I knew this boss was strange. Seeing the resurrected Inferno Monarch, Wang Yu muttered. No wonder the people of Black Dragon Guild dared not mind the mine. This boss had the ability to resurrect. The biggest advantage that players had over bosses was that they could resurrect and could continue to attack the boss. However, the Inferno Monarch in front of them had the ability to resurrect, which basically negated the player's advantage. A level 80 boss was already difficult to deal with. With the ability to resurrect, who could deal with it? No wonder the players of Black Dragon Guild had not taken this mine for themselves. This Inferno Monarch was a cheat. Ha ha! Seeing the expressions of Wang Yu and the others, the Inferno Monarch laughed proudly. You didn't expect this, did you? I'm immortal. You bunch of thieves. Don't even think about touching the property of a god. Bang! A piece of or smashed into the Inferno Monarch's face, interrupting his lines. You talk too much. Sinful Rampage cursed under his breath and rushed forward. Wang Yu also jumped in front of the Inferno Monarch. Despicable thief. Flame Blast. The Inferno Monarch's body swayed when he was hit by evildoers run wild. He cursed and pushed his hands forward. Two flames flew out from his palms and blasted toward the Wang Yu brothers. Ice Dragon Blast. Wang Yu slammed her palm forward against the incoming flame shockwave. An ice dragon flew out and collided with the flame shockwave of the Flame Monarch. Psst, the two spells, one ice and one fire, collided and released a large amount of water vapor. Wang Yu's magic priority was not low to begin with. Ice Dragon Blast also countered fire, so he was able to block the Inferno Monarch skill. Wang Yu had all kinds of skills, so he was not afraid of facing the Inferno Monarch head-on. As for evildoers run wild, he was even more crude than Wang Yu. Thunder Rage Claw. Evildoers run wild shouted angrily. Lightning surrounded his hands, and his fingers formed claws that grabbed the flames. Then, he clapped his hands together. Pa! The Inferno Monarch's magic was smashed into sparks by evildoers run wild's claws. Such a simple and crude method not only stunned Wuji, but even Wang Yu was a little envious. A freak who put all his stat points into strength was indeed terrifying. After blocking the Inferno Monarch's attack, Wang Yu did not stop at all. They instantly rushed in front of the Inferno Monarch. Wang Yu lowered his body, and evildoers run wild leaped forward. The two brothers, one holding a pickaxe and the other a staff, smashed the Inferno Monarch's ankles and head at the same time. Bang! The Inferno Monarch cried out in pain as it fell to the ground. Then, they used the brothers' one-staff technique and beat the Inferno Monarch into a ball of crimson fire elements. But this time, the fire elements did not dissipate. Instead, they gathered again like before. F*CKU. Looking at the gradually gathering fire elements, Wang Yu and the other two were dumbfounded. It was not that Wang Yu had never encountered a boss that could resurrect, but most of them could only resurrect once, or the resurrection skill had a cooldown time, but this Inferno Monarch seemed to be able to resurrect infinitely. After dying, it turned into elements and resurrected again. How could this be any more shameless? What was even more shameless was that Wang Yu killed the Inferno Monarch twice, but not only did they not lose a single hair, they did not even gain any experience. Forget it. Let's go. After failing to kill the Inferno Monarch twice, evildoers run wild was a little impatient. He waved his hand and was about to leave. Don't, Wuji hurriedly said. We might find a way to kill it if we kill it a few more times. Not interested. Evildoers run wild curled his lips and said, I spend hundreds of thousands per second, and you want me to farm this useless thing here? You guys take your time to study it. Send me a message when you're done. Chapter 1418. Indeed, Evildoers Run Wild was a big boss. He had a lot of things to do every day. He had so many subordinates that needed to eat. His time was precious. He was different from Wang Yu and Wuji. Wuji could farm monsters that did not drop equipment and did not give EXP. Evildoers Run Wild was too lazy to play. He just told them to let him know when he was done. This kind of principle was really like a boss. Seeing that Evildoers Run Wild had left, Wuji said helplessly, Let's go. Why? We're not fighting anymore? Wang Yu asked. We're not fighting anymore. Wuji shook his head and said, We have to use a special method to kill this thing. We don't have any clues at all. It's useless. We have to find some clues first. That makes sense. Wang Yu nodded. Sharpening the knife would not delay the work of cutting firewood. This logic was useful everywhere. This so-called Inferno Emperor was different from normal wild bosses. Wild bosses didn't have a fixed location and could travel anywhere. Inferno Emperor, on the other hand, seemed to be the local boss of this mining area. It was very likely that it was a character from the background story of the Shimatai game. To find clues about this kind of boss, they had to ask the NPCs in the main city. After all, Inferno Emperor had been here for so many years. There was no way that the NPCs here did not know him. Asking the NPCs was actually a little more troublesome, but it was not difficult. However, after returning to Yamatai City, Wang Yu had no idea where to go. It could not be helped. Yamatai City was a foreign place to Wang Yu. Wang Yu did not know where the NPCs were hiding. Although Wang Yu was not afraid of fighting, Wang Yu was still a newbie and otaku. His ability to adapt to the game environment was still very different from normal players. Well, Wuji, you can go and inquire about the information by yourself. I will find a place to wait for you, Wang Yu said with a headache. Wang Yu had obviously underestimated how lazy Wuji was. Hearing Wang Yu's words, Wuji waved his hand and said, I'm a mental worker. This kind of physical work doesn't suit my style. Then how did you ask? Do you want an NPC to report to the City Lord's mansion? Wang Yu could not help but roll her eyes. Putting aside whether the City Lord had the authority to do so, if he did, with Wuji's personality, he would definitely do it. Wuji grinned and said, That's a good idea, but the only NPCs I can command are the guards. What would those fools know? Then what do you want? Wang Yu was puzzled. Hee hee. Wuji smirked. Brother Chun and the rest should have familiarized themselves with the main city by now. Achoo. Sure enough, it was just as Wuji expected. At this time, the other members of the Chuanjin sect had already familiarized themselves with the distribution of NPCs in Siamatai. They were gathering the tavern to have a drink or two. Just as everyone sat down, Chun Xiang sneezed heavily, giving everyone a fright. Could it be that one could catch a cold in the game? Strange. Chun Xiang rubbed his nose and said, Why do I feel a chill on my back? Could it be that someone is scheming against me? Just as Chun Xiang finished speaking, a message from Wuji appeared in the guild channel. Where are you guys? I'm at the tavern. Do you want to treat us to a drink? Everyone asked with a smile. They all knew that Wuji had a disease that would kill him if he treated someone to a drink. He would definitely not come if they asked him to pay. Who knew that Wuji would reply decisively this time? Okay, order the most expensive wine and put on my tab. Everyone was stunned. Did the sun rise from the west today? Wuji would treat people, and it was the most expensive wine? As expected, his tone was different after he became the city lord. As expected of the city lord, after everyone sighed, Chun Xiang shouted to the tavern waiter, Give me 20 bottles of the most expensive wine. Put on Wuji's city lord's tab. F***CK. Everyone was shocked. There are 9 of us, and you want 20 bottles of wine? Aren't you afraid that Wuji will find trouble with you? What do you know? This is for me alone. If you want to drink it, order it yourself. Chun Xiang looked at everyone in disdain. Can you finish 20 bottles? If I can't finish it, I'll take it away. Chun Xiang said shamelessly. It's a rare opportunity for the old dog Wuji to treat us. If we don't order more, wouldn't it be a waste of his kindness? Brother Chun is right. We are giving him face by ordering more. Being shameless was a traditional culture in Chuanjin. Everyone was instantly convinced by Chun Xiang and shouted, Give me 10 bottles too. Put it on Wuji's tab. Even a well-behaved lady like Yang Na blushed and asked for 5 bottles. Yes, it was mainly to cater to the atmosphere. Everyone was doing bad things, and if you didn't do it, you wouldn't be fitting in. This was also why Chuanjin could subtly influence so many honest people. The efficiency of the system's tavern was needless to say. In an instant, the whole table was filled with bottles of wine. Everyone was just about to divide the loot when a message from Wuji popped up in the guild channel. Everyone must have spent a lot, right? Not bad. Mingdu looked at the table full of the most expensive wine and said proudly, You won't go back on your words, right? Don't worry, I never go back on my words. Wuji smiled and said, Since the wine is here, shouldn't everyone get up and move around? Hearing Wuji say this, everyone became alert and could not help but ask, What do you mean? It means what you understand. Wuji said, Go to the NPC and help me find clues about the Flame Sovereign in the mining area. F*CK, why don't you go? Everyone was unhappy. Those who played single-player games knew how disgusting it was to look for clues. Everywhere they went, they would be harassed by the NPCs in the city. There were so many NPCs in the game, and looking for clues was a physical task. Because I didn't do anything to help you. Wuji smiled. Do you think we're the kind of people who would do anything to help you? You're overestimating us. The people of Chuanjin said in disdain. It was obvious that Wuji did not understand them. Of course not. Wuji smiled and said, the money for the wine just now was paid for by Old Cow. If you don't want to die, go ahead. Seeing Wuji's message, everyone's faces darkened. This was blatant coercion and temptation. They dared to offend Wuji, but would they dare to offend Wang Yu? Everyone's attitude changed. So it's about Old Cow. If there's anything, Nyoge can just say it directly. Why do you have to do this? Nonsense. If I told you directly, you'd pretend to be blind. Wuji knew this group of bastards very well. If Wang Yu asked them to help fight the boss, these guys would definitely not object. After all, Wang Yu was very loyal to them. However, if he asked them to do something as boring as searching for clues, there was an 80% chance that they would use Black Drifting Bottle to contact them. F*CK. Is that old dog Wuji considered a dog pretending to be powerful? Everyone was very dissatisfied with Wuji's action of using Wang Yu to scare them. They all blamed Chun Xiang. It's all your fault. You took so much wine from him. What do you know? Chun Xiang raised his middle finger and said, even if you took a bottle, that old dog would still blackmail you. Chapter 1419. Although the people of Chuanjin would not do anything without benefits, they were still very serious about what they promised. After ruthlessly squeezing Wuji, they left the tavern and split into 4 groups to ask the NPCs one by one. At the same time, Wang Yu and Wuji arrived at Yamatai City's library. Yamatai City was indeed the main city of the Wayne Nation's server. The library was very local. Seeing a female manager wearing a uniform sitting there, Wuji felt as though he had seen this scene somewhere before, and a series of license plate numbers involuntarily popped up in his mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. Hello, Mr. Chancellor. How can I help you? If you want to check. It seemed that Wuji had a lot of prestige as the Chancellor. The librarian was very respectful. If it was someone else, they would not even say a word. No. Wuji waved his hand and interrupted the librarian. I have something to ask. The librarian smiled. If you ask, Mr. Chancellor, you can give me a 20% discount. Okay. Wuji nodded. Please give me the information about the Flame Sovereign. Saying so, Wuji took out a bag of gold coins and handed it over. The librarian took the gold coins and said casually, the Flame Sovereign is the guardian of the Divine Flame mining area. He is very powerful. After that, the librarian stopped talking. That's it. Wuji was a little dumbfounded. Spending 80 gold coins to buy such a useless sentence? Was there a need for her to say that the Flame Sovereign was the guardian? Mr. Chancellor, you have to pay for this question too. The librarian smiled cunningly. Wuji took out 160 gold coins and handed it over expressionlessly. Tell me, how can I kill the Flame Sovereign? The librarian took the gold coins and said, the Flame Sovereign is the incarnation of the fire element. In theory, he is immortal. As for how to kill him, I'm sorry. This is something that the players can figure out themselves. F*CK. Hearing the librarian's words, Wuji vomited blood. Meow. Wuji finally realized that it was unrealistic to use the library as a strategy library. There were many exploratory questions in the game that could not be answered in the library. He couldn't get any *T out of this administrator. Looking at the answer he gave, he could only summarize it in 2 sentences. 1. The Inferno Sovereign is the mine's guard. 2. The Inferno Sovereign cannot be killed. Damn it, this was all already known to Wang Yu and Wuji. What was the point of saying all this? Wang Yu and Zhang Xian left the library in a bad mood after their fruitless questioning. After leaving the library, the 2 of them went to the tavern. Now, They could only wait for the other customers of Chuanjin. There was no boss in the game that could not be killed. The reason why Wang Yu could not kill the Inferno Monarch was most likely because Wang Yu lacked a certain item or some special condition. And this kind of item or condition was the exploration content that needed to be triggered. Since the Inferno Monarch was the mine's guard and was recorded in the library, it was obvious that this fellow was the local tyrant of Yamatai City. The condition to trigger the mission should be in Yamatai City. Now, they could only wait for Chun Xiang and the others' news. After a few hours, the rest of Chuanjin arrived at the tavern one after another. Seeing that everyone had returned, Wuji quickly stood up and asked, "How was it?" However, everyone's attitude was not very pleasant. Their faces were dark as they said, unhappily, "Nothing much." After receiving Wuji's order, everyone split up and asked all the NPCs they saw. However, there was no useful information. Almost all of their answers were the same. The mine? No, there's a demon there. It's too scary. Young people, please don't take things too hard after hearing the same words countless times that night. One could imagine how the people of Chuanjin felt. That shouldn't be. Wuji rubbed his chin and mumbled. Are there some NPCs that you didn't ask? Should we go and ask again? Get lost. Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was furious. Wuji was really easy to say. Yamatai City was such a big place. There were more than 1,000 NPCs. Everyone searched for a whole night and didn't find any clues. They were already in a bad mood. Who would be in a mood to play hide and seek with NPCs? Don't be angry. Wuji quickly smiled and said, I know everyone has worked hard. Let's take a break first. Then Wuji waved at the bar and said, Boss, give me 10 bottles of your most expensive wine. Now, Wuji didn't dare to offend the people of Chuanjin. Looking at what evildoers run wild meant, if they couldn't deal with the mine's boss, evildoers run wild wouldn't let his subordinates come to Yamatai City. When that happened, the most tragic person would be Wuji, not to mention the awkward position of a commander without an army. Without players doing quests, there would be no construction rate. Without construction rate, the city wouldn't have income. When that happened, the maintenance costs of Yamatai City would have to be paid by Wuji. Being a solo city lord was simply a burden. Moreover, what kind of person was Wuji? Chuanjin's shameless and wretched personality usually came from Wuji. Seeing that there was so much wealth in the mine that he couldn't use, Wuji felt like a cat was scratching his heart. So at this time, Wuji had to make Chuanjin and the other working masters feel comfortable. That's more like it. Seeing that Wuji was so sensible, the expressions on the people of Chuanjin's faces became better. The people of Chuanjin were all arrogant and unruly people. If it weren't for Wang Yu, they wouldn't have done something so strenuous and unrewarding. If Wuji's attitude was bad, these people would have flipped the table and left. They might even beat up Wuji. The NPCs were quite efficient. It didn't take long for the waiter in the tavern to bring a pile of wine to the table where Wang Yu and the others were. Wang Yu muttered to himself, Why can't I kill that Inferno Monarch? Unexpectedly, at this moment, the waiter's originally numb and mechanical eyes suddenly lit up. He turned his head to look at Wang Yu and said, Inferno Monarch? Why don't you ask our boss? Yeah. Hearing the waiter's words, everyone was stunned. At the same time, Wang Yu received a system notification. System notification. You have triggered the quest, Ancient Mine. Quest rank A. Do you accept? Accept. Without hesitation, Wang Yu accepted the quest. System notification. You have accepted the quest, Ancient Mine. Quest rank A. Quest background. The Divine Flame Mine contains a huge amount of wealth. Unfortunately, this is the property of a god and should not be coveted by mortals. Quest content. Ask the owner of the tavern in Yamatai City about the Ancient Mine. This, after receiving the system notification, Wang Yu immediately sent a screenshot of the system notification to the guild channel. When everyone saw Wang Yu's quest content, they were dumbfounded. Chapter 1420. After taking a look at the mission details, Wang Yu stood up and walked to the tavern owner. Boss, do you know about the primordial mine? Upon hearing Wang Yu's question, the tavern owner lifted his head and sized up Wang Yu. Then, He nodded and said, "Yes, there's a terrifying demon called the Flame Monarch there. My grandfather's grandfather was killed by him. Young warrior, I can see that you're all strong. Can you help me take revenge?" At the same time, Wang Yu received another system notification. You have activated the second part of the Primordial Mind mission, Demon Flame. Mission Rank A. Do you accept it? Hey, upon hearing this, the Chuanjin people could not help but rejoice. Meow, this tavern owner really has a way. However, Wang Yu was not in a hurry to accept the mission. Instead, he frowned and asked the tavern owner, "The Flame Monarch has a powerful immortal body. We're not confident that we can help you take revenge." The Flame Monarch's strength was not worth mentioning. The immortal body was the thing that gave Wang Yu the biggest headache. "No, warrior." Upon hearing Wang Yu's words, the tavern owner waved his hand and explained, "The Flame Monarch you saw was just a clone created by the real Flame Monarch using the fire element. The Divine Flame Mine contains a large number of flame ores, and there is an abundance of fire element in the mine. As long as the fire element exists, the clone will not be destroyed. In order to kill the Flame Monarch, you have to kill his real body." Real body? I see. Upon hearing the tavern owner's words, Wang Yu was enlightened. No wonder the Flame Monarch could resurrect infinitely. So that was the reason. Luckily, he came back to ask. Otherwise, who knew how much fire element was contained in the entire Divine Flame Mine? He would really be at odds with the Flame Monarch for the rest of his life. After thinking for a while, Wang Yu immediately asked, "Where is the Flame Monarch's real body?" "According to my grandfather, it is under the Divine Flame Rift Valley," the tavern owner said with certainty. "All right, in that case, I will accept the mission." Wang Yu decisively clicked yes. To Wang Yu, finding a boss was much more difficult than killing one. As long as he knew where the Inferno Monarch was hiding, everything would be much easier. System notification. You have accepted the second phase of the quest, Ancient Mine, Demon Flames. Quest Rank A. Character Background. The Flame Sovereign was the guardian of the ancient Divine Flame mining area. He had killed many treasure hunters who coveted the wealth of the gods. Mission details. Kill the Inferno Sovereign 0 of 1. Friendly reminder. The Flaming Sovereign is extremely powerful. Please form a team and have at least 20 people. TSK, TSK, TSK. This mission is really... When Wang Yu sent a screenshot of the mission to the channel, everyone from Quanzhen couldn't help but click their tongues in amazement. There was strength in numbers. Whether it was in the real world or in the game, this was the truth, especially in a game like Rebirth that relied heavily on teamwork. Under normal circumstances, there would be a limit to the number of people that could participate in a mission. A mission with a small limit was not necessarily easy. However, the more people there were, the harder the mission would be. The mission that Wang Yu had just received actually did not have a limit to the number of people. One could see how difficult it was. However, thinking about it, it made sense. This was a level 80 Dark Gold boss, and it was a mage. What was worse was that the Flame Sovereign had an immortal body, so it was reasonable that it would be difficult. 20 people. We don't have enough people now. Seeing the limit, everyone muttered to Wuji, "Go to the Blood Alliance and call some people over." Wuji was about to say something, but Wang Yu said, "No need." Everyone was slightly stunned. "You have a suitable candidate?" "No." Wang Yu shook his head. "It's almost 10 at night. I have to go offline and rest. Let's do it tomorrow." F***CK. Everyone was depressed. Can you be more like a player? Which expert in the gaming circle didn't put in all their effort? The people from the Chuanjin sect had never seen anyone who divided their time so meticulously when playing a game. What was even more hateful was that this guy was the #1 expert in the game. Who could they find a reason with? Although that was the case, everyone knew Wang Yu's habits. Even if Wang Yu disappointed them at a crucial moment, he would only complain. He would not force Wang Yu to stay with them through the night. Wang Yu was about to go offline when Wuji suddenly asked the owner of the inn, "Is the Divine Flame Rift the crack that the Flame Sovereign jumped out of?" "That's right." The owner of the inn nodded indifferently. F***CK. As soon as the owner said this, Wang Yu, who was about to go offline, stopped what he was doing. Wuji wiped his sweat and said, F***CK. I knew it wouldn't be so simple. The NPCs in Rebirth were known for being cunning. There was no way they would tell the players where the boss was hiding so easily. As expected, the Divine Flame Rift was a huge pit. The others in Xuanzhen didn't know, but Wang Yu and Wuji had seen the Divine Flame Rift before. It was a crack in the Earth's crust, and below it was magma. The magma was boiling with flames, and the flames were dozens of feet high. If players jumped into such a crappy place, they would definitely be burned to ashes. The Flame Sovereign was basically invincible if he hid in the Divine Flame Rift. Seeing Wang Yu's expression, the owner of the inn suddenly put on a cunning merchant's face. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, Lord Hero. My grandfather's grandfather obtained 3 fire-resistant scrolls that can block fire elements. There are only 2 left now. Then give it to me." Wang Yu stretched out his hand and asked for it. The owner laughed and said, "This fire-resistant scroll is very precious. How can I give it away so easily?" Wang Yu was speechless. He said, "Big brother, we are avenging you." "I know," the tavern owner said, "but that's a different matter. If you help me take revenge, I'll give you the reward you deserve. Something as precious as the fire-repelling scroll is a deal between us. How can taking revenge for my family be related to a deal? My morals don't allow me to do that." The owner's words left Wang Yu speechless. As expected of an NPC who was known for being despicable and shameless. This was the first time Wang Yu met someone who talked about making money out of the dead in such a dignified manner. How much is 1 scroll? Wang Yu also knew how the NPCs in Rebirth were like. He couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with the owner, so he went straight to the point. "Not expensive." The owner said, 10,000 gold coins each. Ugh. Wang Yu was speechless once again. No matter how precious a scroll was, it was a one-time use item. High-level scrolls in the market were only around 1,000 gold coins. The owner of the inn actually dared to charge 10,000 gold coins each. If it wasn't for the fact that Wang Yu knew that NPCs couldn't lie, Wang Yu would have suspected the owner's true intentions. How was this for revenge? It was obviously to sell something. Chapter 14:21. Of course, for the sake of the quest, he had to buy it no matter how expensive it was. Wang Yu was not someone who lacked money. 10,000 gold coins was not a big sum to him. "Oh, right." Wang Yu was about to take out the money when he suddenly raised his head and asked cautiously, "This scroll can't be used by a single person, right?" The quest's minimum requirement was 20 players. If this scroll could only be used by 1 person, wouldn't it be a scam? With the style of the designers of Rebirth, it was not impossible for them to do such a thing. "No." The tavern owner shook his head and said, "This is a ward scroll." "That's good." Wang Yu let out a long sigh of relief and took out 2 bags of gold coins. Ward scrolls, as the name suggested, created a ward around the player. They were AoE-type scrolls. At this moment, Mingdu, who heard the tavern owner's explanation, stopped Wang Yu in the channel and said, "Old cow, since it's a ward scroll, just buy 1. Makes sense." Seeing that Mingdu was smart for once, everyone praised Mingdu. After all, it was an AoE ward scroll, not a single-person scroll. Having 1 was enough. Buying another would be a waste. However, Wuji said, "Buy both of them." Why? Everyone did not understand. No matter how small a fly was, it was still meat. 10,000 gold coins was also money. Hee. Wuji laughed and asked the tavern owner, 3 scrolls. "Back then, your grandfather's grandfather only used 1? "Yes." The tavern owner nodded. "So he's dead?" "Yes." The tavern owner's expression was solemn. F***CK. The Xuanzhen people felt a chill down their spines. "See?" Wuji said in the channel. "This is a scam. You guys still have to train slowly." Wang Yu did not hesitate and bought the 2 fire repellent scrolls. Fire repellent scroll, magic scroll, consumable. Attribute: creates a magic ward that isolates fire elements within a 500-meter radius after use. Duration: 30s with the scrolls. Wang Yu and the others had no more worries, so Wang Yu went offline. The weather that night was exceptionally good. After Wang Yu took off his helmet, the moonlight shone through the window onto Wang Yu's face. A gentle breeze blew over, making Wang Yu's face feel warm. Time flew by, and before he knew it, it was summer again. 10 o'clock at night wasn't too late for someone who played online games all year round. For a professional gamer, this was the time to start work. However, when Wang Yu saw the moon and stars in the sky, he suddenly realized how beautiful the night was in the real world. Lying on the bed, Wang Yu glanced at Mu Zixian beside him and smiled warmly. Dong dong dong. As Wang Yu was letting his imagination run wild, there was a knock on the door. Wang Yu pulled a shirt over her body and jumped off the bed. She opened the door and saw Ma Li standing outside the bedroom. Seeing that it was Wang Yu who opened the door, Ma Li said softly, My landlord. Ma Li was usually very bold, but now she seemed to want to say something. Wang Yu looked down in confusion and saw that Ma Li was carrying a suitcase in her hand. Seeing the suitcase in Ma Li's hand, Wang Yu was stunned. He asked in confusion, What's going on? I'm leaving, Ma Li said with a lonely expression. Leaving? To where? Did you guys have a conflict? Wang Yu wasn't a person who was proficient in worldly affairs. Ma Li's sudden departure caught Wang Yu off guard, and he didn't know what to say. They had played together for so long, and these four girls were as close as sisters. Why would they leave just like that? Could it be that they were being ostracized? Molly didn't answer Wang Yu's question. Instead, she took out a letter and handed it to Wang Yu. Landlord, pass this letter to Sister Shui and the others. Thank them for treating me like a sister these 2 years, and thank you and the landlady for taking care of me for so long. Goodbye. After saying that, Molly bowed deeply to Wang Yu and walked out of the house without looking back. Wang Yu stood at the bedroom door in a daze. He didn't know if he should chase after Molly. However, after thinking for a while, Wang Yu guessed that this girl seemed to have something she couldn't say. In the end, he didn't ask her to stay. He just stared blankly at the letter in his hand. What are you looking at? Just as Wang Yu was in a daze, Mu Zixian took off her gaming helmet and couldn't help but ask when she saw the letter in her hand. That, Wang Yu said hesitantly. Molly left. Left. When Mu Zixian heard Wang Yu's words, she was very surprised. She said in surprise, The 4 of them were helping me just now. I didn't see any unpleasantness. She left after answering a phone call. Obviously, Mu Zixian's thinking was the same as Wang Yu's. She thought that Ma Li had a conflict with her little group. It shouldn't be a conflict. Wang Yu shook his head and said, It seems like she has something she can't say. You should give this letter to Li Shui and the others. I'll go. Why me? Mu Zixian said gloomily. Whoever gave this kind of letter would be embarrassed. But just as Mu Zixian was about to reject Wang Yu, Li Shui's anxious voice came from outside the door. Sister Xian, brother Yu, have you seen Molly? Mu Zixian was about to say something, but Wang Yu spoke first. Your sister Xian has something for you. As he said that, he opened the bedroom door. You scum. Mu Zixian glared at Wang Yu fiercely. She picked up the letter on the table and walked out. After a while, Mu Zixian returned to the bedroom. Did you give the letter to her? Wang Yu asked curiously. Yes. Mu Zixian said with a distressed expression. What reaction? Wang Yu continued to gossip. She was so anxious that she cried. I couldn't stop her. Why didn't you stop that lady? Mu Zixian said with a reproachful tone. Who knows? Wang Yu shook his head and said, I don't know why, but when I saw that lady, I felt like I saw myself in the past. She chose to leave quietly at this time because she didn't want others to know. Parting is always sad. You understand quite well. Mu Zixian rolled her eyes at Wang Yu. After all, I've been through it. Wang Yu sighed. Although Wang Yu and his wife's relationship with Ma Li wasn't as close as Li Shui and the others, they had lived together for so long after all. Their relationship was still very deep. At this time, Ma Li's sudden departure made Wang Yu and his wife a little sad. However, Wang Yu also understood that everyone had their own difficulties. Sometimes, you felt that your actions were good for others, but it was really just a feeling. At the end of the day, the relationship between Wang Yu and them was just that of a tenant and a landlord. Chapter 1422. The next morning, Wang Yu woke up early. He saw Li Shui and the other two sitting in the living room with red eyes and not saying a word. It seemed like the girls were still immersed in the sadness of their friend's passing. This was not hard to understand. After all, the four of them had a good relationship. Now that one of them was gone, no one would be able to pull themselves together so quickly. Thinking back to when Uncle Nyo's good friend passed away, even someone as strong as Uncle Nyo cried for an entire night. Li Shui and the other situation was only slightly better than Uncle Nyo's. Although they did not know where their friend went, they still had a thought. Sigh. Facing the few sorrowful girls, Wang Yu silently sighed. When I returned to the game, the Chuanjin people were already waiting. Inferno Monarch. Just from a name, one could tell that it was a big boss. Everyone basically had one goal when they played the game, and that was to become stronger. There were only three main factors to become stronger: equipment, experience, and technique. Technique needed time to polish, and the first two came from a boss. With such a big boss waiting to be killed, everyone was more enthusiastic than anyone else. It was a level 80 Dark Gold boss, and its doppelgangers were all elite. Its main body was at least epic. Such a high-level boss had a high drop rate of top-tier equipment. Moreover, this was the first kill. If not for the fact that only Wang Yu could pull the boss, Chuanjin people would have gone to the mines to test the waters. Wang Yu was also an experienced player now, so he naturally knew how Chuanjin people felt. Seeing everyone's anxious expression, Wang Yu hurriedly waved his hand and said, "Okay, let's go." "No rush," Wu Ji said. "Did you forget that the quest can only be done by 20 people? I've already notified Blood Red War Flag, and they will be here soon." After saying that, Wu Ji pretended to be mysterious and added, "Right, Blood Red War Flag said that we will be doing the quest with a group of experts. There will definitely be people we will not expect." "Really?" To place one's pride said, after Blood Alliance was tricked by Finger the Heavens, the number of experts in their guild can be counted on one hand. How can we not think of them? Crash. To place one's pride had only just finished speaking when the door to the tavern rang. Several players pushed open the door and entered the tavern. The person in the lead was extremely burly. Not only was he slightly taller than Wang Yu, but his shoulders were also twice as wide as Wang Yu's. Even among shield bearers, such a robust player was rare. However, this player carried a massive, green, wooden bow on his back. The bow was densely engraved with magical inscriptions. One glance was enough to tell that it was a godly relic. The quiver on the archer's back was filled with thick arrows that were comparable to the spears in the hands of knights. "It was you." After seeing the archer's attire, the Chuanjin people were startled and couldn't help but shout while pointing at the archer. The burly archer was none other than the captain of the Netherworld King's battle team, Death God's left hand. Behind him were the players from the Netherworld King's battle team. It's you guys?" Seeing the Chuanjin people, Death God's left hand was also startled. He seemed to be in disbelief. This was because before coming to Yamatai, Death God's left hand had heard from Blood Red War Flag that the guild that had asked for Blood Alliance's help this time had taken down Yamatai City, the largest city in the 3 islands of Ingzhou, from the hands of the Black Dragon Guild. As for how strong the Black Dragon Guild was, Death's left hand naturally didn't know since he had never fought them before. However, Yama City was far superior to Saga City in every aspect. To be able to force the Blood Alliance to settle in Saga City, it had to be a large guild on the same level as the Blood Alliance. Yet, it was actually the people from the Quanjun sect. Death's left hand really couldn't handle them. Of course, the fact that Wang Yu was the city lord of Yuhuicheng was not a secret. Chuanjin was able to suppress Blood Alliance in Yuhuicheng, so it was reasonable for them to occupy Yamatai City. Death God's left hand quickly thought of this. On the other hand, Chuanjin was very surprised that Underworld World and Blood Alliance were together. Underworld World was a veteran team. There was no need to doubt their strength. Putting aside their lack of tactics, in terms of individual strength, apart from Wang Yu, Death God's left hand wasn't weaker than any other expert in Chuanjin. Even a high-level expert like Yang Na couldn't gain an advantage in front of Death God's left hand. They were definitely experts. But didn't Underworld World have sponsors? Since when did he start messing around with the Blood Alliance? This was what Xiuanjin didn't expect. Someone as straightforward as Mingdo asked right away, "How did you get together with Blood Alliance? Didn't someone sponsor you? Where's that sword?" "It's the Rapid Lightning Sword," Baosan corrected. "Right, the Rapid Lightning Sword," Mingdu said. This, Death God's left hand, was a bit embarrassed. "Our results aren't important to Underworld World. What we want is respect. We terminated the contract after the Pro League. Although it was normal for experts to transfer in the pro circle, many fans found it hard to accept. They would often call the transferred players slaves." Death God's left hand was a bit embarrassed when he said he terminated the contract. However, terminating the contract was expected. After all, whether or not a team could have a good result depended on the tacit understanding and cooperation between the tactician and the teammates. Rapid Lightning Sword style was very obvious, and Underworld World style was also fixed. Both sides couldn't change because they wanted to. Parting ways was inevitable. "Then you guys came to Blood Alliance?" Mingdu asked. "Yes." Death God's left hand nodded. "Blood Alliance was lacking people, so they signed us. Guild leader Blood Red is a good person." Blood Red War Flag had always been a hands-off boss. When they first cooperated with the Quanjin sect, they were willing to listen to a sinister and cunning person like Wuji. Of course, they wouldn't interfere with the Netherworld King's team. Blood Red War Flag is really lucky. Hearing Death God's left hand's words, Xiuanjin couldn't help but sigh. These guys from Underworld King's realm weren't simple at all. Compared to the people from Blood Alliance, they were only stronger and not weaker. Adding on the crazy Death God's left hand, they had the strength to compete with 9 states. However, because of their independent personalities, no one had ever sponsored them. Now, Blood Alliance's experts had been poached, and Blood Red War Flag had signed Underworld World. Blood Alliance lacked experts, and Underworld World lacked sponsors. Now that both sides were working together, their strength was on a whole new level. What was a blessing in disguise? Being close to Xiuanjin meant that Blood Red War Flag was also tainted with the protagonist's aura. Chapter 1423. Wang Yu followed closely behind and slapped the Inferno Monarch's clone's face, pinning it to the ground. Tisk, Tisk, Tisk. Seeing that Wang Yu had suppressed the Inferno Monarch's boss, the people from Hades' world could not help but exclaim, "The old cow is still so powerful." Death's left hand and the others thought back to when they fought with Wang Yu and broke out in cold sweat. Although the Inferno Monarch was a level 80 Dark Gold boss, most of its strength came from its unlimited resurrection. Its true strength was only at the level of a level 60 normal boss. It was not difficult to understand why a monster of this level dared to call itself a level 80 Dark Gold boss. Think about it, a level 60 boss that could resurrect infinitely on the spot. Even if a real level 80 boss came, it would probably be killed by it. Therefore, no matter how powerful it was, it could not be more powerful than eternal life. This was very clear in China's classical literature. After all, Sun Wukong was so powerful because he wanted to seek immortality. I accidentally drowned a part of it, of course. Even though he was difficult to deal with, his strength was still there. Wang Yu and his group were all top-notch experts. The strength of the Flame Sovereign's clone was really not enough. It would not be difficult to get rid of this guy and enter the Divine Flame Valley. With Wang Yu around, the Inferno Monarch was completely suppressed. After the others attacked it from all sides, the Inferno Monarch's clone was reduced to a ball of fire. Stand beside the old cow. At the same time, Wuji gave the order to gather. After receiving the order, everyone hurriedly gathered beside Wang Yu. Wang Yu took out a fire-resistant scroll and tore it open. Poof! As the scroll was used, a sky-blue shield spread from Wang Yu's hand and covered everyone around Wang Yu. Without a word, Wang Yu led everyone to the top of the Divine Flame Rift and jumped into the crack that was spitting flames. Holy shit! Seeing Wang Yu act so crazily, everyone from the Netherworld King realm was shocked. But at this time, the blue enchantment passed through the raging fire snakes and fell into the crack. Everyone's field of vision darkened, and when they opened their eyes once more, they had arrived in another scene. Below the godly flame Rift Valley was a fiery crimson, filled with blazing fire elements. Waves of heat waves assaulted one's face, and the monochromatic background gave people a strange feeling. Looking at the world of flames around them, everyone was dumbfounded, thinking that they had entered the Inferno prison. Where is this place? After testing the surroundings, Death's left hand asked in confusion. He had seen the left hand of the Grim Reaper many times, but this was the first time he had seen such a strange scene. As soon as Death's left hand finished speaking, everyone received a system notification. System notice: you have discovered the one-time hidden instance dungeon, Blazing Realm. EXP plus fixed. System prompt: you have entered the hidden instance dungeon, Blazing Realm, and triggered the instance dungeon quest, Blazing Heart. Quest background: 1,000 years ago, the King of Flames, Inferno Monarch, was imprisoned here by martial god. He seems to have some secret on him. Clear requirements: kill Inferno Monarch and obtain Blazing Heart 0 of 1. It's a one-time hidden instance dungeon. Seeing the system prompt, everyone's hearts trembled. Hidden instance dungeons. Wang Yu and Xuanjin were no strangers. As professional players, even if they had not encountered one before, they would have heard of it. This was a special instance dungeon that contained a huge amount of wealth. It was a miracle system developed by the game company to optimize the gaming experience for players. For example, the immortal trail forest that Wang Yu had encountered in the past and the underwater world of Atlan were both hidden instance dungeons. Xuanjin had tasted the sweetness of these instance dungeons. Whether it was a mortal trail forest or Atlan, the wealth contained in a hidden instance dungeon was several times that of a normal instance dungeon. It was enough to turn an unknown character into an expert. However, although the rewards of a hidden instance dungeon were great, the rewards were proportional to the effort. Not only were hidden instance dungeons extremely difficult, but they were also extremely rare. Wang Yu and Xuanjin had only encountered one twice after playing for so long. With such a low probability, ordinary players might not even encounter one, even after playing AFK. As for a one-time hidden instance dungeon, it was the rarest type of hidden instance dungeon. One could just imagine the probability of triggering one. Who would have thought that there would be a one-time hidden instance dungeon hidden in this godforsaken place? For a moment, everyone's hearts were filled with excitement. There was no need to say much about Xuanjin's group. These bastards were the kind of people who would die if they did not take advantage of something. As for Team Netherworld, although they were professional experts, compared to other professional players, the word poor was etched into their bones. After all, they did not even have a sponsor. When they went out, they relied on grinding for equipment. Now that they saw a one-time hidden instance dungeon, these poor guys were like beggars who saw a mountain of gold. Their eyes were filled with greed. The good-for-nothing Hades even cried out, "Mommy, we're going to be rich." Everyone was moved when they heard this. Team Netherworld was honest, but they were not stupid. After learning that they had entered a hidden instance dungeon, they were excited. Then, Death's left hand calmly asked Wuji, "Boss Wuji, although Netherworld is here to help this time, this hidden instance dungeon." Death's left hand's words were vague, but his meaning was extremely simple. He was just short of telling Wuji that whoever saw it would have a share. Naturally, Wuji was not the kind of person who would eat everything alone. Team Netherworld was so poor that they were eating dirt. Wuji would not be able to take all the benefits away. Seeing Death's left hand ask for a share, Wuji smiled and said, "Of course. How about we divide it according to class?" Divided according to class? Death's left hand looked at his subordinates with a troubled expression. Team Netherworld's strategy was very simple. They revolved around Death's left hand, their core damage dealer. As a result, the class composition of Team Netherworld was quite unbalanced. Physical damage dealers occupied the majority. As long as one was not a fool, they could see that the monsters in this hidden instance dungeon were mainly magic-based. If they were divided according to class, Team Netherworld would not have the slightest advantage. What? You don't agree? Seeing that Death's left hand was in a difficult position, Wuji smiled at Wang Yu and then asked Death's left hand, How about we divide it according to work? Death's left hand followed Wuji's gaze and looked at Wang Yu. Immediately, he shivered and said, "That would be boring. If we divide it according to class, then so be it." Chapter 1424. What a joke. Death God's left hand was still traumatized by Wang Yu's ferocity. Moreover, 80% of the damage output professions in Xuanzhen were DPS professions. If they really listened to Wuji's suggestion, Underworld would probably not get anything at all. It was not difficult to see from the dungeon's environment that the Blazing Realm was a dungeon dominated by magic monsters. Even if the equipment dropped was not mage equipment, it would at least be equipment that increased the fire attribute. As for mages, Netherworld King's Realm and the Quanjin sect each had a mage. Basically, every class had a need for fire-type equipment. Although fire-type equipment was more commonly used by DPS classes, it wasn't much of a profit. It was absolutely fair to distribute it by class. This was because Death God's left hand did not understand Xuanzhen's character. If Death God's left hand had been in contact with Xuanzhen for a long time, he would definitely realize that this was already the biggest concession that Xuanzhen could make. Seeing that Death God's left hand agreed to distribute according to profession, Wuji smiled and said, "Since Boss Left Hand has no objections, we will distribute according to profession." After saying that, Wuji nodded at everyone and said, "Let's start the dungeon." "Okay." Everyone responded and walked into the depths of the Blazing Realm. In the Blazing Realm, everything was mainly fiery red, and the ground was dark brown, scorching flame Oregon. There was only a flame path a few meters wide in front of everyone, and on both sides of the path was tumbling magma. Although their senses were weakened in the game, and they could not even feel pain, under such a color rendering, everyone felt a trace of heat from the inside out. After walking along the flame path for about 3 to 5 minutes, Wang Yu and the others finally arrived in front of a fiery red palace. From a distance, the palace looked extremely magnificent, and a sense of oppression and heat waves hit them in the face. It seemed that this was the lair of the Inferno Overlord. Seeing this magnificent palace, everyone could not help but think, are they King imprisoned? They're clearly here to enjoy life. In front of the palace, there were fiery red monsters wandering. On both sides of the palace gate stood 2 tall guards with spears in their hands and flames on their bodies. Everyone cast detection, and the monsters' attributes were reflected in their eyes. Inferno Elf, Elite, level 65, HP, 300000 MP, 500000 skills, Flame Attack, Flame Blast Talent, Flame Bath Monster Introduction. Originally a fire elemental wandering in the land of divine flames, it has become a powerful magical creature with consciousness after being transformed by the Flame Monarch. Flame Guard Elite, LV70, HP, 100000 MP, 20,000 skills, Sweeping Flames, Earth-Splitting Flame / Talent. Flame Bath Monster Introduction, a flame mine in the divine flame land. Under the influence of the Flame Monarch's spiritual power, it has become a powerful creature with spiritual consciousness. It possesses great destructive power. This is the monster from the one-time use hidden dungeon. It looks very ordinary. After seeing the attributes of the 2 monsters, everyone's hearts, which were originally worried, were slightly relieved. Originally, everyone was still wary of the difficulty of the Hidden Instance dungeon, but the attributes of these 2 monsters were really not that great. At first glance, it was obvious that the Flame Guard was a strength-type monster. Although its skills were AoE attacks, it was also an enhanced version of the 2 famous useless skills of knights and warriors. Its main characteristics were that it had a long prerequisite, a long cooldown, and a long cooldown. It was known as the 3 long skills. Its cost-effectiveness was far lower than the Collapsing Mountain and Whirlwind Slash of the same level. If the game had just started and the players were still noobs, these 2 skills would definitely be divine skills. However, now that everyone had awakened, they were already immune to all kinds of fancy skills. At the end of the day, practicality was the most important thing. Most players could not even be bothered to spend money to learn these skills. Naturally, the flame guard with these two skills was nothing to worry about. As for the flame elf, it was even more distressing. As a level 65 elite monster in the Hidden Instance dungeon, it only had 300,000 HP. It was not even as high as the HP of monsters of the same level in the wild. At this stage of the game, level 50 shield warriors had more than 100,000 HP. The Flame Spirit's two skills, Flame Attack and Flame Blast, didn't sound like high-level skills. Instead, they were as lame as low-leveled skills like Sidekick and Uppercut. The dignified Flame Overlord's Gatekeeper was actually this kind of thing. It was really embarrassing. Let's start. Wuji pointed at the flame elf not far away and gave Death's left hand an order. Death's left hand took a deep breath, pinched a thick arrow, and hung it on the bowstring of the giant bow. Pull the bow. Load the arrow. Let go. Everything was done in one go. Bang! With a thunderous sound, the thick feather arrow instantly traveled tens of meters and hit the head of one of the flame elves. Duong! Death's left hand's arrow was extremely powerful, and the arrow directly nailed the flame elf to the wall of the palace. Hearing the sound of the arrow, a string of exclamation marks appeared on the heads of the surrounding flame elves. Then, they looked in the direction where the arrow had flown from and immediately saw Wang Yu and the others. Ga. After seeing the players, the flame elves grinned and revealed their pale white teeth. Oh! Seeing the originally round and cute flame elves turn into this, everyone could not help but feel a chill down their spine. Subsequently, they heard the flame elves shouting excitedly, Ga, there's human meat to eat again. They ran towards the crowd as they shouted. The flame elves were not huge. They were only over a meter tall, but there were many of them. There were 30 to 50 of them, and they were like a crimson tide charging at them. Second brother, Blood Fiend. Seeing that, the players from both sides shouted for their shield warriors at the same time. Yin Lao Air and Blood Fiend walked to the front of the team with their shields raised. That was the teamwork of experts. Encountering such a situation, the way to deal with it was the same. Seeing that they were cooperating so well with each other, Yin Lao Air and Blood Fiend looked at each other and smiled. They then charged into the crowd of monsters and shouted at the same time, Bastard, with their backs against each other. There were many combo skills in Rebirth. Since Yin Lao, Air, and Bloody had a teamwork, the effect of their taunt and the range of their skills were doubled. Whoosh! The flame elves that were initially in a mess were pulled by Yin Lao, Air, and Bloody to their side. At the same time, Mingdu, who was behind them, lifted his staff and released two signature skills, Heavenly Lightning Descent and Heavenly Lightning Hellfire. In the blink of an eye, flames and lightning appeared from the sky and the ground. Although the two skills were neither awakening skills nor ultimate skills, they were unique hybrid spells. Mingdu had been using them since he was a low-level awakening skill, and he was very familiar with them now. Their power was not much weaker than awakening skills. Moreover, they had a short cooldown and could be activated quickly. It was the signature magic that Mingdu often used to cooperate with Yin Lao Air. Chapter 1425. Fire Baptism. The Flame Elf is the embodiment of the fire element and can transform fire damage into its own power. The damage of Radiant City's fire-type spells was second only to that of the lightning-type spells. Radiant City's damage output was also unrivaled. These two spells were also the most commonly used skills in Radiant City, and their proficiency with them was also the highest. When the two spells landed on the Flame Elf, the Flame Elf's attributes rose by a large margin. F***CK. Seeing this scene, everyone jumped in fright. They pointed at Radiant City and scolded, "Are you retarded?" Mingdu also felt extremely wronged. Yin Lao Air went up to taunt them, and he casually set fire. This routine had become a conditioned reflex after such a long time, and he had never thought that there would be such a thing. Who knew that this monster would have such a shameless move? With Yin Lao Air and Yin Lao Air ridiculing them, the Flame Elves' aggro had already been pulled onto the two of them. At this time, Mingdu added fuel to the fire, and the flame elves became even more arrogant. They opened their mouths and spurted flames at Lao Air and Lao Air. The two of them hurriedly raised their shields to protect themselves with their backs against each other. Fortunately, the two of them were top-notch experts, and their equipment was also top-notch. Otherwise, even if the two of them had thick skin, they would not have been able to resist for long when surrounded by dozens of high-level monsters. Although Mingdu could learn spells of all elements, the quality of skills was more important than the quantity. Mingdu was only proficient in the lightning and fire elements. As for the other elements, Mingdu was only proficient in Earth Wall, which had good defense and control. As for ice and wind spells, which had more control than damage output, Mingdu had never leveled up his proficiency level. After all, attributes were mutually exclusive. Mingdu's fire attribute was already very high, and if he added an ice attribute, his fire attribute would probably be lowered. Mingdu pursued extreme damage output, and controlling the flow of attacks was not in line with his style. How could he neglect the essentials? Rakshasa! Now! Seeing that the two shield-bearers could not hold on any longer, Wuji roared at a blue-robed mage beside Death's left hand and ordered him to attack. The mage that Wuji had addressed as Rakshasa waved his staff and cast the ultimate spell, Blizzard, on Lao Air. Not everyone was like Mingdu, who pursued a high damage output of the lightning element. After all, the fact that lightning magic could not be locked onto was a very technical setting. No matter how strong one's damage was, if they couldn't hit the enemy, it would be zero. Furthermore, teamwork was the core of the game. Every team would be equipped with a hand controller. Ice mages were much stronger than warlocks in terms of damage output and maneuverability. Because of this, 9 out of 10 mages in Rebirth were ice mages. Rakshasa was a professional player at the peak of his class, putting aside the players from 5 Lakes and 4 Seas who were ridiculously strong in the same class. There weren't many people in the entire game who could match up to Rakshasa in terms of ice magic. Hoo-hoo! As the cold wind howled, snowflakes fell on the flame elves, causing a series of damage and slowing down the flame elves' movements. Blizzard had the attribute of slowing down normal targets by 30% and reducing attack speed by 20%. However, the ice element was the perfect counter to the fire element, doubling the control and damage output. As a result, the pressure on the healers at the back was greatly reduced, and Lao Air and Death became much more relaxed. Fire attacks might not work, but lightning attacks were still possible. After the situation stabilized, Mingdu made a hand seal with both hands and threw a cloud storm at the flame elves' heads. Dark clouds gathered, and bolts of lightning struck the group of monsters, creating a deafening sound. The reason why mages were called masters was that no matter how low their damage output was in the later stages of the game, they were still far superior to other classes. The Flame Elves did not have much HP to begin with. After being hit by 2 top-notch experts, their HP instantly turned red. Hee. After their HP turned red, the Flame Elves let out a strange cry and leaped into the air. They spread their limbs and crawled on top of Lao Air and Death's shields. Not good. Seeing the Flame Elves' seemingly familiar action, Wuji was suddenly shocked. He raised his staff and a holy light covered Lao Air. Boom, boom, boom. Immediately afterward, balls of fire soared into the sky and instantly engulfed Lao Air and Death. The others were also shocked by the sudden chain of explosions, and they could not help but look at Wuji. Damn, the so-called flame blast turned out to be a self-explosion. To be able to use such a vicious skill, this group of dwarves is really... As a representative of the self-explosion style, Wuji was no stranger to self-explosion damage. A self-explosion skill was a sacrifice of one's own life. It was an attack that used one's own life to exchange for another's life. The damage output was extremely terrifying. What was even more terrifying was that the self-explosion damage was usually true damage that ignored defense. Lao Air had Wuji's invincible holy shield, so he was not hurt at all. Blood fiends were not so lucky. Although the priest Apothecary Doe's skills and awareness were not low, he did not play self-explosion. This sudden self-explosion caught Apothecary Doe off guard. As a result, he did not have time to cast Holy Light on Blood Fiends. Blood Fiends was drowned in the explosion on the spot and died. When the smoke dissipated, only Inlao air was left on the chaotic battlefield. The ground was a mess, and there were scattered fire elemental fragments everywhere. Fortunately, the flame elves were all fire elementals. If they were made of flesh and blood, this part would have been very harmonious. As expected of a hidden dungeon, in just one round, the flame elves had taken away a tank from Wang Yu's team at the cost of a complete annihilation. This made everyone sigh. As the saying goes, once a demon goes, there will be no return. There was one less person. This was just the beginning. They had not even entered the door, and they had already lost an important tank. Who knew how difficult the later stages would be? Huh? What is this? Just as everyone was feeling sorry for the loss of their teammate, Inlao air suddenly picked up a red bead from the ground and sent its attributes to the team channel. Flame Bead, Rare Mineral Item Introduction. Crystal of the Fire Elemental. Contains powerful fire energy. Damn, it's a flame bead. Give it to me. Seeing the attributes of the flame bead, Mingdu jumped up and shouted as if his tail had been stepped on. The eyes of Grim Reaper's left hand and the others lit up when they saw it. Inlao Air was a tank class, and his specialty was to take a beating. Inlao Air was not very interested in beating people up, so he did not recognize the flame bead. However, most of the people present were damage dealers, so naturally, they knew what it was. The flame bead was a rare mineral that could be embedded in a player's equipment to increase a player's fire attribute. Its effect was basically the same as the thunder bead that Mingdu had obtained in Thunderstorm City. In Rebirth, not only mages but all classes had attribute damage settings. Therefore, even physical attack classes could increase their fire attribute. Chapter 1426. Fortunately, the Flame Orb seemed to be a guaranteed drop item. Every Flame Elf had one, and there were dozens of them. On average, everyone was able to get a few. Otherwise, it would have been difficult to distribute such a consumable item. After obtaining the Flame Orb, everyone had tasted the sweetness of a hidden dungeon. The gloominess that had arisen from Bloodfiend's death had been swept away. After all, monsters in ordinary dungeons rarely dropped items. Even if they did, they would just be trash that could be sold in shops. Gold coins were more practical. Since monsters in a hidden dungeon would definitely drop rare ores, it was clear that the hidden dungeon was rich in resources. It was even better than the legends. As expected of a hidden dungeon, even monsters can drop such an item. Grim Reaper's left hand grabbed the flame orb in his hand and looked at the people around him. He could not hide the excitement on his face. The other Underworld players couldn't help but lick their lips. They had already begun to imagine how powerful their powerful attacks would be if they had the fire attribute. Seeing the reaction of the Underworld players, Wang Yu was speechless. Although the flame orb was a rare, or it wasn't rare. It was sold in auctions in all the major cities. Although it was expensive, it wasn't like there was no market for it. These Underworld players were first-rate professional experts, but they were so excited to see this item. It was clear how poor they had been in the past. Seeing the experts he had once been a fan of so poor, Wuji felt an inexplicable pain in his heart. Don't just get excited. There are two more. Wuji pointed at the guards at the entrance. Watch me. After receiving the flame orb, Grim Reaper's left hand was in a much better mood than before. Without waiting for Wuji's order, he took out 2 arrows from his quiver, raised his longbow, and released them. Bang! 2 arrows shot out, one from the left and one from the right, piercing the chests of the 2 flame guards. Duong! The powerful force forced the 2 flame guards to take half a step back. Then, they roared and pounced at everyone. Although the Inferno Guard's level and attributes were higher than the Inferno Elves, Strength-type monsters had slow movement speed. Moreover, the Inferno Guard possessed the fire attribute. As a result, Rakshasa, who was an expert in Ice-type spells, was able to restrain the Inferno Guard. The Rakshasa raised her staff and shot a row of icicles at the flame guard. Puff, puff! The icicle hit the flaming guard and turned into a blue mist. A layer of frost formed under the flaming guard's feet. Cone of Cold had a 60% movement speed reduction effect, and if the effect was doubled, it would be 120%. Due to Strength Monster's judgment, they had 40% immunity. Even so, the Inferno Guard's movement speed was reduced by 80%. Suddenly, the Inferno Guard stopped moving. Ice Mirror. With a chant, the Rakshasa staff touched the ground, and the ground beneath the Flame Guard's feet turned into ice. This time, the Flame Guard couldn't move at all. This was the power of controlling spells. Everyone present was an expert, so dealing with a stationary target was relatively easy. After a wave of attacks, the health bars of the two Flame Guards were emptied. With a furious roar, they turned into shattered ores on the ground. Clang! At the same time, a crisp sound reached everyone's ears. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound and saw two crimson, transparent gems quietly lying on the ground where the Flame Guard had died. They emitted a gentle glow. Another item dropped. Everyone's hearts tightened. Wang Yu casually waved his hand and used Cloud-Grabbing Fist. A white light flew out and wrapped around the two gems. Flame Gem, precious mineral item description. Flame Crystal contains powerful fire energy. When used to forge equipment, there's a certain chance that the equipment will turn into magic equipment. F***CK, it's a magic gem. Everyone was dumbfounded when they saw the attributes of the Flame Gem. Even Wang Yu and Wu Ji, the two guys who were usually calm, could not help but raise their eyebrows. From the item description, the Flame Gem and the Flame Orb were similar. They were both energy crystals. However, in terms of function, there was a fundamental difference. The Flame Orb was used to add fire attributes to equipment. In layman's terms, it was called enchantment. The Flame Gem, on the other hand, could turn equipment into magic equipment. That was an upgrade in grade. For example, if the same weapon was smashed with a Raging Flame bead, the attribute display would at most increase the fire attribute by +1. If a Raging Flame gem was smashed, the attribute display would become Raging Flames XXX. At the same time, there would be an additional fire attribute skill. The grade of equipment was determined by the number of additional attributes. This was equivalent to upgrading the equipment by 1 grade. From this, it could be seen how precious magic gems were. Under normal circumstances, magic gems were dropped by bosses. The two elite monsters guarding the gate had dropped such an item. The drop rate of this dungeon was too terrifying. There were a lot of flame orbs, so everyone could divide them. However, the flame gem was as precious as equipment, so they could not be divided. Grim Reaper's left hand looked at the gem in Wang Yu's hand. He wanted to say something, but he hesitated. After all, this thing was in Wang Yu's hands. If Wang Yu did not want to give it to him, he could still force it. It was not worth offending Wang Yu for 2 gems, but this thing was too precious for the poor people in the underworld. Putting aside the fact that Death's left hand really wanted those 2 gems, he had played the most important role in killing the 2 Flame Guard from the Underworld King's realm. At this time, he could only watch as Wang Yu took the gems away without saying a word. This was a bit unreasonable. Who would want a safe face? Even if Wang Yu modestly gave up, at least it would be considered giving Death's left hand a way out of this embarrassing situation. Wang Yu also felt Grim Reaper's left hand's burning gaze, so he could not help but ask, "You can use them, right?" Grim Reaper's left hand nodded faintly. "Here." Wang Yu did not waste any time and directly stuffed the 2 gems into Grim Reaper's left hand's hand. Yeah. Wang Yu's generosity made Grim Reaper's left hand dumbfounded. These were F***King magic gems, which cost at least 2,000 gold coins on the market. Grim Reaper's left hand thought that Wang Yu would argue with him, but who would have thought that Wang Yu would casually give it to him? Grim Reaper's left hand held the 2 gems and looked at the others in Xuanjin. Xuanjin's left hand looked indifferent, as if they were not surprised by Wang Yu's behavior at all. Grim Reaper's left hand was completely stunned. Was this still the legendary, despicable, and shameless Xuanjin? Will they give good things to others? Chapter 14:27. Brother Iron Ox, hearing Wang Yu's words, Death's left hand, and the others were so touched that they were about to cry. However, before they could say anything, Wang Yu's next words angered them to death. Wang Yu shook his head and sighed. Sigh, it's sad for a professional team to end up like this. I was poor before, and I feel sad when I see you guys. F***CK. Death's left hand was stunned. He was so angry that he almost threw the gemstone in his hand at Wang Yu's face to prove that he did not accept handouts. No matter how poor the Netherworld King team was, they were still professional experts. In the game, killing bosses and completing high-level quests were the prerogatives of experts. With these skills, even if they were poor, it was only relative. Compared to other professional teams, Netherworld King team might be poor, but they were not pitiful. Besides, the Netherworld King team had just gotten a leg like Blood Red War Flag. How could they be short of money? Although the Netherworld King team still retained their previous habits of being poor, Wang Yu's words were not giving them face. Seeing Death's left hand's expression, everyone from Xuanzhen rolled on the ground with laughter. There was no way around it. Wang Yu was scary when he was honest. This was already very tactful. What? Seeing everyone's strange expressions, Wang Yu was puzzled. What do you mean? And nothing. Wuji waved his hand and said, Death's left hand and the others are very touched. As he said this, Wuji looked at Death's left hand, who was holding the gemstone and about to throw it at Wang Yu's face. He raised his eyebrows and said, Are you touched? And no. Death's left hand lowered his head. Forget it. After all, Wang Yu was just being kind. Death's left hand was not the kind of person who did not know what was good for him. No matter how angry he was, he would not really attack Wang Yu. Continue. They had obtained so many good things before entering the palace. Everyone was in a good mood. After the Death God's left hand put away the flaming gem, everyone smiled and came to the front of the palace gate. The door of the palace was tightly shut. Yin Lao, Air, and Bao San, who were walking at the front, pushed it without thinking, but the door did not budge. No one was surprised that the door wasn't pushed open. After all, there were many doors in the game that couldn't be opened with brute force. You two idiots, you still have to rely on me at the crucial moment. At that moment, Dao Shua looked at Bao Saner and the others with disdain and walked forward. Then he took out a strange key from his bag and poked it a few times at the door. Finally, he gave it a light push, a smug smile on his face. The door did not budge. The place suddenly fell silent, and the smile on Mingjian Daoshue's face gradually froze. Impossible. Mingjian Daoshue flung his hand awkwardly. He took out the key and poked it a few more times, but the palace's door remained tightly shut. Famous sword Daoshue's sweat flowed down his neck. Seeing this, everyone could not help but feel puzzled. It was normal for the door in dungeons to not be opened, so everyone would often bring a thief to open the door, commonly known as the door-opening thief. Anyone who played God of War would know that the monkey was always unlucky. Although famous sword Dao Shue's PvP strength was not that great, he was a very hard-working person who did not lack money. His skill proficiency was very high, and his pick-lock skill was maxed out. He was a professional door-opening thief. If this kid could not open the door on his first try, he would at most be called the shame of all thieves, but it was a little strange that he could not open the door after so many tries. If he could not even enter the dungeon, then what was the point of doing it? It seemed like there was a trap in this door. As they pondered, everyone looked around. At that moment, Yang Na suddenly pointed at the door and said, "What's up there?" Up there? Everyone looked in the direction of Yang Na's finger and discovered that the door was filled with grooves. They were densely packed and looked very disgusting. Moreover, there was a huge groove in the center of each door. As the color of the door and the groove were the same color, both were fiery red, one would not be able to tell that there was something on the door if one did not look carefully. If Yang Na was not a martial artist with extraordinary facial features and an archer, they would probably not be able to find these grooves even after searching for a long time. The viciousness of the game designer was evident. Are these grooves keyholes? Famous Sword Dao Shui touched the door and muttered to himself. No. Wuji counted the number of grooves and said, "Take out the Raging Flame Pearl and Raging Flame Gem." What? Hearing Wuji's words, everyone was slightly stunned. They said in surprise, "These ores are used to open the door?" Wuji nodded and said, "In terms of quantity, they should be F*CK." Everyone could not help but curse when they heard that. Damn, no wonder the small monsters could drop such rare ores. It turned out that they had other uses. Sharing the loot and spitting on the loot were two different feelings. The game designer definitely designed it this way on purpose. Especially the people from Hades' world. They had never seen anything good before. It was not easy for them to get their hands on something, but they had to take it out. However, if they did not hand it over, they could not enter the next dungeon. This was a hidden dungeon. If the small monsters could drop ores, there was no need to talk about the later dungeons. No matter how unwilling they were, everyone knew what they had to do. Thus, under the lead of the Grim Reaper's left hand, everyone placed the Flame Pearl in famous Sword Dao Shue's hand. Famous Sword Dao Shue placed the pearl into the groove with one hand and smashed the dagger with the other. Pada! The bead was inserted into the groove. Clack! Clack! With a series of hammering sounds, the last two flame gems were also pressed into the groove. Immediately, the two gems emitted a dazzling light. All the pearls were connected together, forming a strange magic rune on the door. Creak! The palace door slowly opened, and Wang Yu and the others walked in. After passing through the door, they came to a courtyard. The courtyard was very spacious, and the color was still fiery red. Hundreds of small monsters were patrolling the courtyard, and it was a very spectacular sight. Clack, clack, clack. Just then, a knocking sound came from behind them. Everyone was shocked and quickly turned around. They saw Wuji instructing famous Sword Dao Shue to pry out the flame pearls. Boss Wuji, what is the meaning of this? Seeing famous Sword Dao Shue's actions, Grim Reaper's left hand asked Wuji in confusion. Nonsense, Wuji said angrily. You opened the door and didn't pull out the key? Grim Reaper's left hand and the others were stunned. Although they still felt that something was wrong, when they thought about it carefully, Wuji's words made sense. They could not refute him. Clack, clack. Just like that, Grim Reaper's left hand and the others were stunned. They watched as famous Sword Dao Shue skillfully and rhythmically pried out the pearls and gems on the door. Creak! Boom! Chapter 1428. Wang Yu's senses were extremely sharp. As the monsters in the courtyard turned their heads, he immediately felt a monstrous, murderous intent rushing towards him. Wang Yu quivered and quickly reacted. He took out his long rod and placed it in front of everyone. Not good. We've aggroed them. Although the others did not have a sharp, murderous intent like Wang Yu, it was human instinct to sense danger. Even those who did not practice martial arts felt an inexplicable chill on their backs. Without waiting for Wuji's orders, everyone immediately got into formation. At this moment, the monsters in the courtyard flashed red, their bodies doubled in size, and their eyes turned red. Raging Flame Elf, LV65, Elite, HP, 150000 MP, 300000 skills. Raging Flame, Flame Blast. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but be shocked. Damn, it's going berserk. From the looks of it, the ore on the door could be pried off, but the price to pay was that the monsters in front of them would go berserk. After going berserk, the Flame Elf's HP was obviously reduced by half, but the relative damage was bound to increase. From the looks of it, it would at least double. From this, it could be seen that no matter how shameless the players were, they could not be more shameless than the game designers. GA. Following a strange cry, hundreds of raging flame elves in the courtyard suddenly surged from all directions. Everyone's heart sank again. PV and PvP were not the same. Although most players could solo monsters at this stage of the game, whether it was in terms of HP or attributes, players were inferior to monsters. It basically depended on the player's skills. If hundreds of players rushed over, With the strength of the two teams, Chuanjin and Hades, a wave of damage from the mages and archers will be able to wipe out the enemy's backline, and the front line would be struggling at death's door. At that time, the melee players would be able to completely break the enemy's formation. If it were monsters, it would not be so easy. After all, monsters often had more than 100,000 to 200,000 HP. No one could kill them instantly. Moreover, monsters did not have any maneuverability. They only had the heart to deal damage without fear of death. As long as they could not be killed in one wave, they would drag their opponents down with them. The flame sprites were level 65 elite monsters. Everyone had witnessed their attack power before. Once they used burst, even a shield warrior like Blood Fiends would have to kneel. Not to mention, these flame sprites had already gone berserk. Their damage would only be higher than before. If these flame sprites managed to bite down on them, they would likely wipe out the entire team in a single wave. It couldn't be helped. The ruthless were afraid of the unreasonable, and the unreasonable were afraid of the reckless. Encountering such a shameless setting, anyone would have a headache. But then again, the Raging Flame Elves' fighting style was not much different from the Netherworld King Realm's head-on tactics. Seeing the monsters surrounding them, the people from the Netherworld King Realm felt as if they had found a confidant, and their blood surged. The Grim Reaper's left hand became hot-headed, and he waved his hand and shouted, "Fight it out with them! Azura! Era, hold them off! Rakshasa, control the field!" As the Netherworld King spoke, the Netherworld King's group rushed forwards. F*CK. The Chuanjin people were speechless. How can Archer be so stubborn? Was this the reason why he was going all out? Stop right there. Wuji was speechless. He shouted angrily, "Do you know who's in charge?" Hearing Wuji's words, the people from the Netherworld King Realm were stunned and quickly stopped. The Grim Reaper's left hand said anxiously, "If we don't charge now, are we going to wait for death?" "What do you know?" Wuji pointed at the Berserk Flame Elves and said, "Your shield warriors are gone. Can you withstand these self-destructing monsters?" The Grim Reaper's left hand stopped talking. Everyone knew that self-destruction damage was true damage and ignored defense. A shield warrior's shield was a weapon, and its blocking value was different from defense. Therefore, with a shield, one could resist for a while. Without a shield, charging recklessly was no different from suicide. At best, a warrior's skin was thick, and they had more HP, so they could be blown up once or twice. Then what should we do? The Grim Reaper's left hand asked as he looked at the flame elves that were less than 20 meters away from him. Very simple. Wuji calmly waved his hand, then pointed at the Grim Reaper's left hand and said to everyone, with the Grim Reaper's left hand as the center, everyone stand in a circular formation. The circular formation was one of the basic positions for players. It was a formation where the frontline classes formed a circle to protect the DPS position when there were more frontline classes than range damage dealers. It was also known as the multi-protection tactic. It wasn't hard to see from the Netherworld King's class composition that there were more warriors and less DPS, that they were good at protecting one more player. The circular formation was naturally used to perfection. After receiving Wuji's order, everyone quickly changed their formation and stood in formation. Is there a difference? Can't they withstand the self-destruction? However, the Grim Reaper's left hand was full of doubts about Wuji's command. Even if it was the multi-protection tactic, the warriors should be in the front and the DPS at the back. The self-destruction of the flame elves ignored defense. So what was the difference between a circular formation and a square formation? Yes. Wuji snapped his fingers and said, "The self-destruction has an explosive range. We just need to keep them away from our warriors. Keep them away." The Grim Reaper's left hand was confused. At this time, the Flame Elves had already rushed to within 5 meters of everyone. "That's right." Wuji snapped his fingers and said, "Brother Chun, it's up to you." "Got it." Chun Xiang received Wuji's order and nodded. He slammed his staff on the ground, and a black circle appeared under everyone's feet. The dark barrier rose from the ground and trapped everyone inside. Bang! At the same time, The flame elves at the front slammed into Chun Xiang's dark barrier and were nailed to the ground. Huh? The Grim Reaper's left hand and the others were slightly startled and revealed surprised expressions. I see. The Grim Reaper's left hand was relieved. The reason why an expert was because they could use the same skill in a way that caught the opponent by surprise. The Grim Reaper's left hand and the others were professional experts, so they were naturally familiar with using the dark barrier to protect themselves. However, the Netherworld King Realm team did not have warlocks, so the Grim Reaper's left hand and the others did not have this awareness. Of course, the reason why everyone was surprised was not because of the method of using the dark barrier. After all, in such an emergency situation, even professional experts would inevitably panic, let alone ordinary people. However, not only was Wuji as calm as before, he was actually able to analyze the strengths and weaknesses of both sides in such a short period of time. Furthermore, he was able to immediately come up with the most appropriate strategy. This person's mentality and reaction speed were definitely terrifying. Chapter 1429. The Dark Boundary's immobilizing effect was a strong control effect. After being bound by the Dark Boundary, the Flame Elves could not move forward at all. Therefore, the Flame Elves that were blocked opened their mouths and fired Raging Flames at everyone. Raging Flames was an enhanced version of fire attacks. Compared to melee fire attacks, it was much stronger in terms of attack range and damage. In an instant, basin-sized fireballs flew toward everyone. Frontline, hold on. Wuji pointed with his staff. Inlao Air, who was in the front line, raised his shield. Shura and the others also used their bodies to block in front of the others. The Dark Boundary's circle was only so big. Even though everyone was surrounded by the Flame Elves, the ones that could really attack everyone were the dozens of Flame Elves in the innermost circle. Wang Yu and the others had as many as 10 frontline players on the periphery of the circular formation. Everyone could only block a few of the Flame Elves. Raging Flames did not deal true damage like a self-destruct. Although the damage was not weak, ordinary players would probably be beaten half to death if they were hit by this wave. But were these guys from Qianjin ordinary people? These guys were all equipped with excellent equipment. Their armor and magic resistance were extremely high, especially Inlao Air, who only had one artifact shield in the game. Although the people from the Underworld Kingdom were a bit poor, equipment was the foundation of survival in the game. Naturally, they would not be careless with such necessities. Not to mention a few elite monsters' fire attacks. Even if they were stepped on by the boss, these guys would still be lively with the two priests, Wuji and Apothecary Circle. Bang, bang, bang. The 2 meters of fireballs arrived in an instant and hit everyone with a deafening explosion. Inlao Air had a shield in hand, so he was naturally unharmed. Although the holy shield in Shura's hand had been shattered, it had absorbed most of the damage. Coupled with the paladin's insane defense, Shura did not suffer too much damage. He waved his hand over his head. An array of holy light fell, instantly restoring his health to full. This shameless class was infuriating. The others weren't as tanky as the two. After taking a wave of damage, they lost a fifth of their HP. However, Wuji and Medicine Master Do weren't idle either. The two of them raised their staffs and sprinkled 2 beams of holy light. Everyone's HP was quickly restored to full. At the same time, the DPS classes in the back line began their counterattack. As an ice manipulator, Rakshasa was the first to attack. She raised her staff and used the Ice Magic Awakening skill, 1,000 Miles of Ice. A dazzling blue light flashed, and the power of ice spread out with Rakshasa as the origin. In an instant, the fire elves around the barrier were frozen into ice sculptures. The Grim Reaper's left hand knocked an arrow and let go. Bang! The twang of a bowstring could be heard. The thick arrow flew out and instantly pierced through a few flame elves in front of it. Crash! The flame elves that were pierced turned into pieces. At the same time, Mingdu's cloud storm finished chanting, and bolts of lightning fell on the group of monsters. After going berserk, the flame elves only had 150,000 HP. After taking Rakshas's 1,000 miles of ice and cloud storm, more than half of the flame elves around the barrier were killed before they could self-destruct. The ones that were still alive were all weak and fragile. They were wiped out by Yang Na and Exquisite Dream, who were wielding crossbows and killing arrows. Not a single one was spared. They were experts after all. With this wave of DPS from Chuanjin and Hades, more than 30 flame elves were killed. One had to know that no matter how low the flame elves' HP was, they still had more than 150,000 HP. With just one wave of DPS, they had killed 1/3 of the monsters on the battlefield. This efficiency could only be described as terrifying. Of course, these flame elves weren't bosses in manual mode. They didn't have any AI, and after going berserk, they only acted on instinct. Seeing that their companions were killed in one round, not only were they not afraid, but they also pounced forward without hesitation. Old Li, take control. At that moment, Chunxiang's dark barrier ended, and Wuji ordered Mingdu. Earth wall, rise. Mingdu stabbed his staff into the ground, then bent down and slammed it on the ground with both hands. Boom! Hand seals and chanting spells had the effect of strengthening spells. When Mingdu slammed his palm down, the ground around them suddenly bulged more than 3 meters high, blocking all the flame elves outside the wall. The flame elves didn't say a word and started shooting at Mingdu's earth wall. The earth wall was different from the dark barrier. It was a material object that could be destroyed by external forces. Under the ferocious attacks of the flame elves, it didn't take long before Radiant City's earthen wall was blasted into pieces. At that moment, Chunxiang's Darkness Ward's cooldown was over, and the Darkness Ward rose once again. With the cooperation just now, the tacit understanding between Xuanjin and Underworld had greatly improved. Another wave of powerful damage output, Ice Seal, Thunderstorm, and arrows flew. Another third of the flame elves were taken down. At that moment, only 30 or so flame elves remained. Just now, the flame elves had an absolute advantage in numbers, so everyone naturally had a headache. Now that only a third of them were left, there was no advantage in numbers. More than 20 top-tier experts against 30 elite monsters. There was no doubt about the result. Even if the flame elves could self-destruct, it would be useless. The melee classes had long been stifled as meat shields. Now that the flame elves had lost their advantage in numbers, everyone spread out and rushed forward, easily killing the remaining flame elves. But to everyone's disappointment, these flame elves didn't drop flame pearls after they died. They didn't even drop any equipment. Obviously, the flame pearls that the flame elves dropped were just tools to open the door. Fortunately, Wuji had people dismantle the flame pearls. Otherwise, everyone would have lost money. The people from Underworld King's world had just lived a good life, but now they were back to square one. Their hearts were filled with disappointment. They looked at the mess on the ground and shook their heads. TSK, TSK, TSK. We wasted so much effort for nothing. We were happy for nothing. At least we can loot the equipment. What's the point of killing these small monsters? Don't worry. Chunxiang waved his hand and comforted them. We're already here. The boss won't be far away. You'll see the boss soon. Boom! Before Chunxiang could finish his words, a huge black shadow suddenly descended from the sky and landed in the center of the courtyard, smashing a huge crater in the ground with a loud noise. Suddenly, the entire courtyard trembled. Everyone was so shaken that they almost couldn't stand straight and squatted on the ground. Chapter 1430. What is this? The sudden boulder that fell from the sky gave Chuanjin and the others a fright. The Underworld guys were also drenched in cold sweat. Was the system trying to smash them all to death? That was inhumane. Crack! Just as everyone was breaking out in cold sweat from their narrow escape from death, a voice suddenly came from Big Rock's position. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but look over, only to see that the boulder began to shake. Crash! There was another strange sound. The surface of the boulder suddenly cracked, and 4 limbs grew out of it. Then, the boulder clenched its fists, and a huge head grew out. Bang! After the head grew out, the boulder pressed its hands on the ground and jumped to a spot not far from Wang Yu's group. It shouted at them in a low, muffled voice. "Who are you people? How dare you come to the Flame Palace and cause trouble?" Since ancient times, the boss's lines in games had always been this boring. Wasn't that obvious? It was only natural for players to fight in dungeons. They wouldn't behave atrociously. Telling them who they were was as if they knew them. Of course, this kind of formality was still necessary. If they started fighting, not only would the players not be able to prepare, but the boss would also lose face. Most importantly, if the author didn't go through the formality, how could they reduce the word count? F***CK. This thing is actually a boss. Anyway, the players didn't care about the boss's lack of nutrition. They were surprised to see the boulder turn into a stone giant in the blink of an eye. Although everyone knew how the monster came to be, it was still quite interesting to see a boulder turn into a spirit in such a realistic environment. Hence, they immediately cast Detect on it. Hellish Lava Alex, LV70, Dark Gold Boss, Elite, Skills, Skyfire Punch, Skyfall Fall, Inferno Monarch's Contract Talents, Flame Baptism Background Introduction. Alex, who guards the courtyard of the Flame Palace, is a powerful creature created by the Inferno Monarch through a life contract. Its body is lava from the flames of hell, and it possesses extremely powerful destructive power. Hiss, after detecting the hell lava's attributes, everyone couldn't help but gasp. This was a bona fide, level 70 Dark Gold Elite boss. Whether it was its stats or appearance, it was much better than the fake doppelganger in the mine. The fact that such a powerful Dark Gold boss could only guard the entrance showed just how difficult this hidden dungeon was. It was much more difficult than the other dungeons they had seen before. Intruders will have to pay a price. Hell is waiting for you. While everyone was still in a daze, the Hell Lava had already finished reciting his opening remarks. This fellow took so much time to get on the stage, but he was very decisive in his actions. With a roar, his huge fist came smashing over with flames. The Hell Lava was 4 meters tall, and its fist was slightly larger than a player's head. If a player were to get smashed by it, they'd lose at least half of their HP. In the blink of an eye, Ian Lauer raised his shield and placed it in front of him, blocking the people behind him. Boom! The Hell Lava's fist landed squarely on Ian Lauer's God's shield, and a deafening sound rang out. The God's shield's block value was instantly depleted. Ian Lauer was also knocked back a few steps by the punch. F***CK. The Hell Lava's punch caused Ian Lauer to break out in a cold sweat. Ian Lauer knew better than anyone how strong the God's shield's attributes were. Putting aside the main attributes, the 4 block values were what Ian Lauer relied on to save his life. Previously, when he was surrounded and attacked by dozens of people with the God's shield in hand, Ian Lauer could come and go as he pleased. Ian Lauer also had the power to resist any boss he had seen in the past. Who would have thought that this time, with just one punch from the boss, his block value would be depleted? It should be known that when the shield's block value was depleted, it would consume its durability. Once its durability was depleted, the shield would be completely destroyed. The God's shield was a godly weapon. If it was destroyed, it would be impossible to find a second one. If he was hit again, he'd be crying. Thinking up to this point, Ian Lauer hurriedly put away the shield in his hand. If it were any other equipment, Ian Lauer would not even blink an eye. However, the God's shield was definitely out of the question. It was his lifeblood. Seeing that its punch did not kill Ian Lauer, the Hell Lava was slightly stunned. Immediately after, it sent another punch at Ian Lauer. Seeing this, Wuji was shocked. Everyone retreat. Rakshasa, freeze him. I can't hold on any longer. The shield's block value did not recover quickly. Even a godly weapon like the God's shield needed 15 seconds to fully recover. Knowing how ruthless the Hell Lava was, Ian Lauer did not dare to use it before the God's shield's block value was fully recovered. Wuji immediately saw through Ian Lauer's thoughts. He had no choice but to order everyone to retreat. Crap, what a bunch of trash. Seeing Wuji and Ian Lauer's cowardice, The Netherworld crowd could not help but feel disdain for them. What kind of experts are they? Are they cowering after being punched by a boss? Aren't they ashamed? Thinking about how they had once lost to these people, the Netherworld crowd felt an indescribable sense of grievance. Azura, help me hold on. Seeing that Lao heir was about to be smashed to death, the Grim Reaper's left hand immediately ordered Azura. The meaning of the Grim Reaper's left hand was clear. There is no way to retreat in a fight. If you can't, that doesn't mean we can't. If you want to retreat, you can. The Netherworld will never retreat. After receiving the order, Azura immediately understood the Grim Reaper's left hand's meaning. Without a word, he raised a shield of light and charged in front of Lao heir. My condolences. Wuji and Lao heir could not help but shake their heads and sigh. Bang! At the same time, the Hell Lava's fist arrived and smashed into Azura's shield of light. Crash! The light shield shattered, and Ashura was sent flying by the punch. He slammed into the door behind everyone, and a third of his HP was gone. Crap! What kind of monster is this? Seeing this scene, the Netherworld crowd's jaws dropped to the ground. Lao heir was not from the Netherworld, so the Netherworld crowd was not familiar with him. However, they still knew about Azura. Although a paladin shield was not as sturdy and durable as a shield of a shield warrior, paladins were a heavy armor class. In terms of defense, they had the highest defense among all classes. When a paladin activated Guardian Aura, their defense would increase exponentially. In the game, they were commonly known as steel plates. Not only that, as a professional expert, Azura's weapon was not weak either. After transforming into a shield, its defense was not much weaker than that of Shield Warrior's shield. However, just one punch had almost destroyed his shield and killed him. Just how high was the Hell Lava's attack power? Thinking of this, everyone realized what Lao heir had just experienced. Chapter 1431. The Hell Lava was a level 70 Dark Gold Elite. However, aside from Wang Yu, everyone's average level was only around level 50. Power-type monsters already had a suppressive attack power to begin with. Now that there was a 20-level difference between them, their suppressive attack power had skyrocketed to another level. If they try to fight the Hell Lava head-on by relying on their thick skin and thick flesh, they would only be dreaming. The Hell Lava's attack power already had a suppressive effect. Now that there was a 20-level difference, the suppressive effect skyrocketed. It would be foolish to try to fight the Hell Lava head-on just because they had high HP. Although everyone present was a top-tier expert, Wang Yu was the only one who had soloed a Dark Gold boss that was 20 levels higher than him. Hence, everyone was caught off guard when they saw the Hell Lava's overwhelming strength. In truth, this was to be expected. However, they were all experienced experts. After a moment of shock, they understood what was going on. Hence, Wuji gave another order. The boss has a level suppression. Everyone, pay attention to your positioning. Archers, control the aggro. Mages, slow it down. Do not fight it head-on. Profound ice formation. After receiving Wuji's order, Rakshasa waved his staff and cast the level 50 control skill, Profound Ice Formation. A hexagram flashed under the Hell Lava's feet. Blue ice elemental energy gushed out from below and instantly froze the Hell Lava's lower body. Seeing that the boss couldn't move, Yang Na and Exquisite Dream raised their crossbows and fired at the Hell Lava. Unfortunately, with a level suppression of 20 levels, the Hell Lava not only had high attack power, but it also had high defense. Exquisite Dream wasn't a damage-dealing archer. Her attacks hitting the Hell Lava didn't make much of a difference. Yana didn't fear the level suppression because of manual mode. However, the Hell Lava's entire body was made of stone. Yang Na's aim wasn't very good, so her damage output wasn't much. Meanwhile, the Hell Lava only needed to wave its hand to deflect the two girls' arrows. At this moment, Grim Reaper's left hand took the opportunity to take out an arrow from his quiver. He knocked the arrow and drew the bow. The string was like a full moon as he shouted, "Hit!" Pong! The bowstring twanged, shocking everyone within 100 meters. The arrow was as thick as a child's arm. It glowed with a white light as it pierced into the hell lava's right eye. Pucci, blood-red magma, shot out of the infernal lava's eye sockets and landed on the ground, melting it and making hissing sounds. A full-powered archer's snipe skill could only be described as terrifying. Even though the infernal lava was a strength-type boss, it was still knocked back by the powerful impact of the death god's left arrow. It immediately howled in pain. Roar! As a boss that was 20 levels higher than his opponent, not only did he fail to kill his opponent with 2 consecutive punches, he was even shot in the eye by an arrow. The fury of hell lava rushed to his head, and the aggro was immediately pulled by the death god's left hand. With a loud roar, the ice beneath hell magma's feet shattered, and his fists ignited with raging flames. He then took a step forward and swung his fists forward, smashing them towards the Grim Reaper's left hand, which was behind them. Hell magma used a skill in this punch. Wherever his fists passed, the ground was filled with magma. Obviously, this punch was an AoE skill. In the previous 2 rounds, everyone had been forced to the bottom of the wall. Yin Lao Air's shield block value had not recovered yet, and Shura had also been crippled by a punch. There were no players in the front row who could withstand Hell Magma's punch. Wuji and Medicine Master Do had not used their invincibility skills, but invincibility was a single target skill. With so many people in the team, 2 invincibility skills was like a drop in the bucket. At this critical moment, a long rod suddenly flew out and pierced into the other eye without any deviation. Pucci, another wave of magma burst out, and Hell Magma's left eye also exploded. The eye was Hell Magma's weakness. With the eyeball pierced, Hell Magma's body trembled in pain, and the skill in his hand was forcibly interrupted. At this time, a figure leaped up, grabbed the other end of the long rod, and stepped on Hell Magma's face with dazzling lightning. 9 Heavens Thunder. Oh no, it was Thunder Stomp. This figure was Wang Yu. Although Wang Yu did not put all his points into strength, his strength attribute was not weak. In addition to the knockback effect of Thunder Stomp, Hell Magma was directly kicked back 2 steps. In midair, Wang Yu used the force to do a backflip and landed firmly in front of everyone. Wang Yu carried the long rod on his back with one hand and placed the other in front of him. His clothes fluttered without wind, and he had the demeanor of a grandmaster. Everyone was stunned. The people from the Quan Zhun sect were still fine. Everyone had some understanding of Wang Yu's strength. When they saw this scene, they would at most sigh a little. However, the people from the Netherworld King's realm had never seen such a scene before. This was a F*** King Grandmaster of Combat, a famous off-persimmon among so many classes in the game. Now, with just a few punches and kicks, Hell Magma, which even a tank could not withstand, was beaten back. This King Underworld people were a little doubting their eyes. If a Grandmaster of Combat could play at this level, then wouldn't a warrior be able to fly? After being stunned for a full 5 seconds, Death's left hand and the other sincerely gave Wang Yu a thumbs up and said, "Awesome! Awesome is more like it." Wuji rolled his eyes at Wang Yu and said with disdain, "We didn't come out earlier or later. You scared Oldly so much that he peed his pants before coming out. Can you do it?" TCH. Wang Yu rested the rod on his shoulder and said with disdain, "It's just a level 70 small boss. I thought you guys would be able to deal with it easily. Who knew that you guys are so useless? You're even experts." F***CK. Hearing Wang Yu's words, everyone spat out a mouthful of blood. A level 70 small boss, and it was just... Was this something a human would say? Of course, with the strength of Chuanjin and Hades, dealing with the hell lava was not too much of a problem. However, Wang Yu's understated tone was a bit too much. If not for the fact that they could not beat this kid, they really wanted to press this guy to the ground and beat him up. What the hell? No wonder Wuji said that the kid was acting cool. He really lived up to his name. Facing Wang Yu's provocation, Wuji was not angry. After all, he also knew that Wang Yu was speaking the truth. So, he pointed at the hell lava and said, "I know you're strong. Then you fight the boss." "It's nothing." Wang Yu smiled slightly and jumped straight in front of the hell lava with the rod. Boss Wuji, is this okay? Seeing that Wang Yu was really going to fight the hell lava, Death's left hand could not help but ask in a low voice. Although Wang Yu kicked away the hell lava just now, it was nothing for Death's left hand. After all, Death's left hand had also done that. Chapter 1432. After all, no matter how strong Wang Yu was, he was still a grandmaster of combat. He was as weak as a chicken. Even two tanky classes would lose half their HP if they took a hit from the boss. If Wang Yu went up, he would be killed by the boss sneeze. There was no room for error when fighting a boss that was higher in level. There were more than 20 people in the party. The death of a grandmaster of combat was insignificant, but if the death of a grandmaster of combat caused the whole party to be wiped out, it would not be worth it. Why don't you let me do it? Death's left hand added. The Death God's left hand knew that he wasn't Wang Yu's opponent, but PvE was different from PvP. For a melee boss like this, it was hard for melee classes to pull aggro. It was best to have ranged classes pull aggro. No problem. Wuji smiled and waved his hand. He can pull it, but roar. Death's left hand wanted to say something, but he heard an angry roar. Wang Yu's staff had already hit Hell Lava's face. Hell Lava roared angrily. It raised its watermelon-sized fist and punched towards Wang Yu. A strength-type boss had high attack, high defense, and high priority. However, it had a fatal weakness, which was that its movements were too slow. When the Hell Lava fist was raised, Wang Yu had already calculated the landing point of the fist. Hee. In the face of the Hell Lava's raging fist, Wang Yu smiled faintly. Not only did he calmly jump to the side. Boom! Hell Lava's fist smashed into the ground in front of Wang Yu, creating a large crater. With such a powerful punch, the stun time of the attack was also extremely long. Without waiting for the Hell Lava to retract its fist, Wang Yu suddenly rushed forward. His body was under the Hell Lava's body, and he swung his long rod upwards. Bang! A muffled sound rang out as the staff hit Hell Lava's chin. Cool! The Netherworld King's realm experts couldn't help but cheer inwardly as they saw this. Using the boss's stun to dodge and counterattack wasn't a high-level technique in the eyes of the Underworld King's top experts. However, the Hellish Lava was level 70, a powerful boss that could cripple a tank with one punch. Fighters like them would die if they took a single hit. To be able to advance and retreat so freely under this kind of suppression, it wasn't just a matter of skill. His courage and confidence alone were something that everyone present could only sigh in admiration of. Of course, as an elite boss, the Hellish Lava's attacks were not as rigid as those of ordinary bosses. Seeing that Wang Yu actually dared to rush up to him and give him a smack on the chin, the Hell Lava ignored him and wrapped his arms around Wang Yu in an attempt to hug him. F***CK. He wants to hug someone. Seeing the Hellish Lava use such a shameless attack, the Netherworld King's realm experts couldn't help but break out in cold sweat for Wang Yu. The Hellish Lava had monstrous strength. Tanks like Inlao Air and Azura would be half dead if they took a punch from it. If Wang Yu was hugged by the Hellish Lava, he would become a spicy strip on the spot. But at this moment, instead of retreating, Wang Yu advanced. He rolled from between the Hellish Lava's legs to behind him. At the same time, Wang Yu grabbed the staff with one hand and stabbed upwards. Pooh! Wang Yu's staff accurately stabbed between the Hellish Lava's buttocks. In an instant, the entire arena fell silent, and the Hellish Lava was stunned on the spot. Wang Yu's smooth roll and stab with the staff showed that he was quite skilled. Who knew how many bosses had suffered this kind of devastation in the past? Thinking of this, the Netherworld King's realm experts tightened their buttocks. Damn, the young hero was really skilled. In martial arts, there was no such thing as low-end or high-end. As long as one could kill the enemy in one move, it was good martial arts. If Wang Yu's staff stabbed a player, there was an 80% chance that they would be in shadow. As for the boss, no one knew whether it was a shadow or not. In any case, the Hellish Lava's aggro was firmly pulled by Wang Yu. Roar! Damn it! Unforgivable! A few seconds later, the Hellish Lava roared into the sky. It twisted its waist and swung its right arm behind it. Hee. Wang Yu didn't dodge. He jumped to the left and crouched down, hiding under the hellish lava's left leg. The hellish lava's arm and body formed a huge angle, and Wang Yu perfectly avoided the hellish lava's attack. Everyone should take note here. When the enemy attacks from behind, the other side of their body is a blind spot. As long as you crouch down, you can avoid the attack. At the same time, you can grab the enemy diagonally with your right hand and make them lose the ability to fight. If you don't believe me, you can find the strongest person nearby and try. If you are beaten to death, you can find Teacher Neo in your dreams, and Teacher Neo will burn Joss paper for you. Back to the main topic. The hellish lava missed its first punch and was once again stunned. Normally, Wang Yu should have grabbed the hellish lava's crotch. However, he wasn't sure if the hellish lava was male or female. If it was a male, it would be fine. Not only could he attack a vital point, but he could also pull aggro. If it was a female, she would definitely be accused of sexually harassing a female NPC. With the shamelessness of a video game designer, it wasn't impossible for him to do such a thing. To be on the safe side, Wang Yu retracted his right hand and raised his leg. He kicked the back of the hellish lava's knee with thunderstomp. The hellish lava's foot was already a little unstable. Wang Yu's thunderstomp had high priority and a knockback effect. This kick caused the hellish lava to lose its balance. Plop! With a loud sound, the hellish lava fell to one knee. Get down! Thunderstorm rage! Wang Yu shouted and leaped up. His body flashed with green light, and lightning surrounded him. He used the Thunderstorm Badge's skill, Thunderstorm Rage. His strength attribute instantly skyrocketed. Then, he used Eagle Stomp and stomped on the back of the hellish lava's head. Boom! The hellish lava wailed and was stomped to the ground by Wang Yu. What kind of monster is this? The Grim Reaper's left hand and the others were dumbfounded when they saw Wang Yu take down the arrogant hellish lava in just a few rounds. Even the words that were originally used to describe the hellish lava were applied to Wang Yu. In everyone's eyes, this was the real monster. At this time, the Underworld players had mixed feelings. It was a good thing that the boss had been taken down. However, this was a level 70 Dark Old boss. How could it be taken down so easily by a Grandmaster of Combat? The boss had no dignity at all. At this time, Wuji also gave everyone an order. The boss aggro has been stabilized. Everyone attack freely. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.